Welcome to Fearless with Jason Whitlock. I'm Jason Whitlock, your host. Happy Friday. Thank you for joining me. We have a super awesome show planned for you today. We're going to start a little differently, but stick with me because we're going to address and have a conversation about yesterday's show with Anthony and Virgil, do a little bit of late Tennessee harmony to start the show. And then after we do 20, 30 minutes of that, we'll transition. It's going to be a long show today, but it's going to be great. Then we're going to transition into a show about all of my critics and Jason Whitlock versus the world, or Whitlock versus the world, Whitlock versus everybody, as I walk through and address all the different people, all the different celebrities or athletes or podcasters who have had something to say about my feud or disagreement or content that I produced about Stephen A. Smith. Then Steve Kim is going to be on the show to talk some sports stuff. And then we have a new sponsor, Cardio Miracle, that you guys have heard me talking about. And I wanted to bring the founder of Cardio Miracle on because Cardio Miracle is going to be a big part of what I'm doing and what I have been doing the past 2 months. And they've jumped on board as a sponsor. But I think it's so important to share their message with men, particularly men that are trying to get healthier. So I'm bringing the Cardio Miracle founder, John Hewlett, on to have a longer discussion with him about how Cardio Miracle can help you guys get in shape. I swear by the product. So we got a lot of content today. I want you to stick with me. Those of you that get upset when I talk about Stephen A. Smith or whatever, just watch the first half of the show, and then you can either leave or you can skip to the end of the show or whatever, because there's probably about 90 minutes worth of content related to Stephen A. Smith that you might be crying and whining about. So I just want to give you that fair warning. Before I get to the first part of the show, I do want to talk about our great friends and our great purpose with Preborn. You guys know why I support and why we as the Fearless Army support Preborn. Preborn is an organization that believes and supports the concept that life begins at conception. They do this by providing expectant mothers with an ultrasound that introduces that mother to the baby's heartbeat and an image of that baby. And if that woman is thinking about abortion, once she's experienced this ultrasound, she is more than twice as likely to choose life. And that's when Preborn really steps up and steps in. They help her get through the pregnancy and then provide her with a lot of the things, diapers and whatnot, to get through the first 2 years of that child's life. That's why we support Preborn, because they support the belief that life begins at conception, and they back it up with real support that we pay for. And our money, we've had Dan Steiner on the show, the founder of Preborn. It doesn't go to mid-level and high-level executives. It goes to pay for ultrasounds and goes to pay for diapers and baby food and stuff like that. Dan Steiner is awesome. Preborn is awesome. There's 2 ways for you to give. Pound 250 and say the keyword baby. That's pound 250, say the keyword baby. Or you can give the way that I like to give, preborn.com/fearless. I do a monthly contribution, and then it seems like 3-4 times a year, I give more than just the monthly donation. Love to hear from you all when you do donate to Preborn. fearlessblazeshow@gmail.com. This is part of our mission. Thank you so much. Now I want to bring in Anthony and Virgil. I had Anthony sat through the interview, and as I had shared with you all, I think yesterday, that we taped the interview on Wednesday with E. Michael Jones, and it was my intention for Anthony and Virgil and I to have a conversation immediately after the interview where we would break down what we just heard, and I would bring the pastors in to get a biblical take on what we just heard. Some screw-ups happened. We couldn't get Virgil, and we were doing so much on that day that we ended up just not taping it then. And so, again, we taped it on Wednesday. We aired it on Thursday. I taped an introduction because the conversation went directions that I wasn't anticipating. We had E. Michael Jones on because you guys know I've been promoting the narrative that heterosexual lust and pleasure have been eroding our ability as Christians to fight in this cultural war and to discipline ourselves, and that heterosexual lust is the actual slippery slope that's leading to a lot of moral decay. As I shared with you all yesterday, friend of the show, participates in our prayer call, Kevin, hey, sent me an email. You should have E. Michael Jones on. He's written a book, Libido Dominende, that's about that the entire narrative of the book is that sexual liberation is being used as a tool for political control. That's why we had him on. The conversation went a few different directions, and as you heard me in the intro yesterday say, hey guys, this is some heavy conversation. This guy comes across like the white Louis Farrakhan, but we're going to air the interview because I'm a journalist. You've heard me here on many, many occasions explain to you like, no, I grew up when Phil Donahue used to have Farrakhan and David Duke and all these people, and we used to interview controversial people, let them have their say, and then have a discussion about it. And I believe in that. I don't believe in canceling people. I don't believe in saying some conversations are off limits. I like to shine a light on all conversations, and then, as if you follow this show, we then like to apply the Bible to what was said. And that's really the role, the primary role of Anthony and Virgil on today's show. And so, Virgil, just because Anthony got to participate in the conversation, I'm going to go to you first. And so I want your initial reaction to the E. Michael Jones interview. There was a lot said. Some of it was on point. Some of it was broader than I was anticipating. Some of it was really provocative. The guy dropped the N-word. I understood the context. Anyway, your thoughts, Virgil.
Great to be back. Apologize, I missed the other day, the other opportunities of traveling. But that said, I thought the interview was fascinating. It was an interesting conversation. I think like the point that you make about wanting to have people who have different ideas come on the show and express their thoughts, I think is great to do. I'm glad as well that we have an opportunity to circle back and address some of what he shared from a biblical perspective and kind of look at what Scripture has to say. I think a lot of times he was spot on. I use this quote often. I've quoted Charles Spurgeon on your show before and just said that one of the things that Charles Spurgeon, famous theologian from back in the day, once said is that as it pertains to discernment, the issue between knowing what's right and wrong is not the issue rather with discernment is not the definition of it rather is not the difference between right and wrong, but it's the difference between knowing right and almost right. And really that's what we kind of listened to with E. Michael Jones. He was almost right on a lot of things. I think at the point at which you begin to identify a particular ethnic group and then blame them for all of pornography in and of itself, is incredibly problematic, and as he said it over and over and readdressed it, it began to be kind of comical because the reality is the issue of pornography, the issue of sexuality, sexual gratification goes all the way back to the very beginning in Scripture. In fact, we have instructions in the Bible about making sure that we're not slaves to sin. Romans chapter 6, verse 18 tells us not to present ourselves as obedient slaves to anything, that anything that you present yourself to, you're going to be a slave of. It's almost like if you always connect some particular sin to this particular ethnic group did this, it's almost the equivalent of saying, white people are to blame for racism in this country. I mean, that's kind of what it echoes, that kind of idea. And it's a fraudulent idea. What it does is it abdicates any person who's involved in that activity. It abdicates them from responsibility. So if the Jews are now responsible for pornography, well, I'm not to blame. It's the Jews' fault. At the end of the day, all of us are going to be accountable to God. we will stand before God, and God won't be looking for the Jews. He will be asking you what you did with your life, and you'll be judged according to your works. And so for each of us, I think it's important as we listen to arguments around ethnicity, this ethnic group is to blame for this, or this white people are to blame for this, or the Jews are to blame for this. All of those are individual people who are responsible for the decisions that they make, whether they were the ones who promoted the sinfulness or whether they're the ones engaged in the sinfulness. We all have to keep that in mind.
Ooh-wee. Virgil, he hits it right on. Going back to the beginning, that's where we first start to see the blame game. As soon as man sins, as soon as
Genesis.
in Genesis, As soon as mankind sins, Adam and Eve both sin, we see the blame game. The woman, well, it's the serpent. The man, well, it was the woman. But it is those individual decisions, as Virgil points out. Paul would say that in Ephesians chapter 6, we're not fighting against flesh and blood. We're fighting against powers and principalities in spiritual realms. And he also goes on to say in 2 Corinthians chapter 10 that our weapons are not fleshly, but they are spiritual. So this idea of lust, of pornography, of this lust for power, John would let us know that the three things that Satan uses is the lust of the eyes, the lust of the flesh, and the pride of life. So there's no surprise that there is a connection between pornography and power and prestige and what the world promotes as sexual liberation. But again, like Virgil is pointing out here, it's not a particular group. If you look at how Satan likes to work, he loves to work in this realm of us versus them rather than good versus evil. If we look at it as good versus evil, then we can spot it wherever it is. But if we say us versus them, now I'm looking to individual people for the problem rather than evil itself. Satan, he appears in different forms and different formats, but he always sounds the same. So if we looked and made this a good versus evil piece, we would always spot him. But that distraction of it's their fault, it's white people, it's black people, it's Jews, it's this, that takes us away from the real discussion.
So Virgil, he unpacked some history that, I'm talking about E. Michael Jones, obviously, that is like a commonplace conversation inside black barbershops. Who started the NAACP? And who financed it? Who were the members? And that conversation goes on in black barbershops constantly. And I've been in those conversations, and part of my narrative and part of the thing that gets me in trouble and why I take so much criticism is that a lot of times I will say, like, I don't care who started it. If you have decided the NAACP doesn't represent you and your values and isn't working for the betterment of black people, step away from that organization, realize the mistake, realize that perhaps you were hoodwinked and bamboozled. And so what I would say to E. Michael Jones is, like, black people are people that we have a responsibility. We can't always complain, well, someone fooled or tricked us. Right. Because we have access to the same Bible as everybody else. Mm-hmm. And if you're in it, that Bible, and you're sticking to it, you are really hard to fool and trick. Yeah. And so I get the point of get the history, because again, I'm telling you, I've been in the conversation, but at the end of the day, that doesn't eliminate our responsibility or anyone's responsibility for being fooled and tricked, because I'll just say it again and I'll throw it to you, Virgil, like, we all have access to the exact same Bible.
Absolutely, we do. And one of the things we've got to think about, there's a couple of ideas, Jason, that I tried to be careful to float ideas out before I've really thought them through. But your comment about the black barbershop and about different things, related to the conversations we have, the cultural embrace within particular ethnic groups brings this idea to mind. And it's the idea that I'm trying to work through and that is to separate the idea of culture and of ethnicity. And what I mean by that is we have a tendency, if we're not careful, to say black people do X or black people do X, Y, or Z. And so we
I'm
pull
guilty
it all
of that.
into
Go ahead.
Yeah. And so we put all of us into this monolithic kind of idea. Well, really, all black people don't do anything, right? A number of us do. So we've got to separate who we are. I'm a black person, or even if you're biblical, I'm made in the image of God. I happen to be, from an ethnic standpoint, I happen to be black, and what I do. So one is who I am. The other is what I do. What you do is directly connected to culture. Now, there could be a whole lot of folks who are ethnically black who do a specific thing, but to say that is the behavior of all black people is problematic. We have a tendency to be tribalistic, but all of us need to begin anchoring ourselves and mapping our true identity, Jason, to the very thing that you mentioned, which is I want to, as a Christian, I want to anchor myself as a believer in Christ, that I'm connected to the Word of God, and at the end of the day, I am accountable to a holy God for my actions. I won't be able to blame Mama and them, or the black barbershop, or someone around the corner. When the roles of my life are opened, right? I won't be able to turn around. I'll say, I did that. I was responsible for that. And I'll have to pay the penalty for that unless I've repented of that sin and placed my full faith in Jesus Christ. Now, I want to say one last thing. And again, I'm just kind of thinking through this out loud. And I apologize for kind of rambling a bit about it. We have to begin thinking about how we're responding to what we're hearing. Michael Jones said a lot of different things about a group of people and what they did in the cabal. I think it's imperative as we listen to that, we pause, don't get emotional, and really walk through what he said, but don't attach it to this people group. That we need to say this individual did X, Y, or Z. This individual was involved in, and I think he mentioned Pornhub. That individual was responsible. That he will have to answer to God for that. The Jewish people don't have to. Everyone is their own individual, and they're making their own individual decisions about things.
So, Anthony first, and then Virgil chime in. What do you, and this is me being transparent. I've moved to a place of like trying to embrace my Christian identity and trying to partner with people who believe Jesus Christ is their Lord and Savior. And so I think Anthony said, look, we got to get to where it's good versus evil. Mm-hmm. And that's kind of where I think what I'm saying. There are people that believe Jesus Christ is their Lord and Savior, and then I just kind of lump everybody else as secular. Mm-hmm. And that's maybe not even accurate to call them secular. They may be Muslims or they may be Jewish or whatever, but that does seem to be the divide or the issue that I'm struggling with the deeper I get into my faith walk, is that if we're not answering to the same God, there's going to be some division, no?
Sure it will be. That's why we have to come to an objective truth to say, okay, this is what the Word of God says. And once we get to that, that becomes the lens through which we process the world. The problem is our experience in life causes us to fall back on, like Virgil was just pointing out, I'm a black man. And you see it through that lens. And that's why I look at it as a ploy of Satan to get you distracted from what's really out there. What if I could get a whole people group upset at another whole people group, just all whites? Now I can't even hear, I look at how some people look at this, I may not even be able to hear a sermon from a white minister because, well, he's white. Like I've missed the truth. Or vice versa. Well, he's a black guy. I mean, that tells me all I need to know. But when I lean into my primary example and my primary identity being that of Christ, what does Christ say about this? Now it doesn't matter who says it. Now it doesn't matter where it comes from. I'm discerning based off where this is godly or whether it's not godly. And it doesn't matter who it is. I look at the music industry and I say, rather than, well, let's just run from a bunch of Jews or it's run from a bunch of this, I look at, okay, what's being promoted? Is what's being promoted about lust? Is it about death? Is it something that is killing us and distracting us from God? Doesn't matter who's at the top. I know where it comes from, and that's from Satan. That pulls it all away. Now it enables me to be able to reach people and to converse with people who may look different, who may think differently, but we can all agree, or at least come to some understanding, that God's word is our guide for life and godliness.
Yeah. I love that answer. Virgil?
Yeah. I love it too. I appreciate what Anthony did yesterday, or when you guys did the interview. One of the things that he tried to do was he was really asking, and I knew exactly what he was doing when he opened it up. He was asking for, what's the solution, right? The whole point of the conversation, he was like, okay, I hear you. Yes, we agree that issues of pornography are rampant, that it is not helpful to men particularly. It's a decline in our culture. I agree with all of those things. And Anthony was trying to push him. He said, but what's the solution? And the answer that he was looking for was that the solution is an understanding of the message of the gospel. Now he didn't get there. Michael Jones didn't get there. Where he got to during the course of the conversation was really just moralism. What he said was, well, we just need to do better, right? We need to do better. We need to act better. We need to, and he's right about that. But that's insufficient. And the reason it's insufficient is because if you were able to do better on your own, you would have done it, right? The issue is you need to be connected to Christ and him crucified. Michael Jones kind of, began to talk about that bits and pieces, but it was disjointed. It wasn't a crystal clear gospel message. And I appreciated the question that Anthony delivered, because he was going somewhere with it. He was looking to nail it on the head, to the point that you made about good and evil, about just the idea that Jason, that we've got two different ideas, that we need to think about things through the lens of good and evil. I think that's spot on. I would say that within Scripture recognizes maybe two groups of people. I don't want to say two races. There's only one human race, but two groups of people: those who are in Adam, who are left in their sin, and those who are in Christ, who follow him. I think if we think of the world in that sense, we have a very clear idea of how we need to deal with Adam. Adam needs the gospel from a standpoint of repenting of sin and placing his faith in Jesus Christ. Those of us who are in Christ, we understand that we've repented of our sin, but we need to be on a path to continue to walk uprightly and follow him all the days of our lives. And so those are the two distinctions: good and evil, those who are in Adam, those who are in Christ. That's how we need to think about it.
And so, and this is why I wanted to have this conversation immediately afterwards, because what you guys are helping me tremendously, and I made a mistake of, we put out a clip of one of his comments. We put out several clips of his comments, but we put out the one where he talked about the NAACP and who founded it, and it ended up being a distraction from the actual conversation. And again, we brought him on to talk about his book, my narrative about sexual deal, and it ended up going someplace else. And then I fed into it by putting out a clip that I regret putting out, and that's why I deleted the clip, because I poked at people that have a right to poke back, in terms of, hey man, this guy was on your show blaming us for everything, and I get it. That's why I deleted the tweet, and that's why I'm glad you guys are here to refocus, recenter me on, because I totally understand. It's like when Anthony asked that question, Virgil, I didn't have it figured out exactly the way you have it figured out about where he was going, but listening now, I totally get it. And that again, it's like what Anthony's saying, when you understand, because people have seen me on TV, people have seen me on this show, say things are demonic, this is Satan, the devil's in control, and all this, and I can't let someone distract me into, no, it's this group. When, no, it's demonic, it's Satan, it's foretold in the Bible.
Yeah.
And so let's stay away from the group thing. And this, I'm sitting here thinking of it, even, a lot of my conversation that upsets black people is, the black matriarchy and all that other stuff that I talk about and say, can't say I'm going to eliminate all of it, but you guys have certainly given me pause this is, it's good. And so I'm 1,000% sure we're going to leave yesterday's show up on Rumble and on Blaze TV. I may decide to take it down off YouTube just because I know how YouTube works. Mm-hmm. And I know that they could try to give us a strike and punish us and dilute what we normally do, what we do on this show all the time, because it's not abnormal for us to interview someone controversial. And again, I think we've had Bishop Nathaniel on twice from Hebrew Israelites. And, just as a journalist, I believe in talking to everyone. Mm-hmm. It's an opportunity to learn. It's an opportunity to have your thoughts challenged. It's an opportunity to spark additional conversation. It's been very beneficial for me just in this conversation. But guys, I want to give you all, Anthony, when we talked before the show, did we get to all the points you wanted to make?
We did.
Virgil, if you got something you want to throw in here before we go?
No, I think, man, this is a great conversation to have, and I think people are getting a chance to watch, our own evolution, our own sanctification is really the biblical word, our own sanctifying process of the Word of God as we wash ourselves with the water of God's Word and get a clear mind. Our mind is being renewed as we peer into the lens of Scripture. So this is an important aspect of the show. It's important to go back and look at Scripture. I say bring those folks on and let's have the debate, because there's no reason to run scared when you stand on the foundation of God's Word. And so we can do that effectively with flat-footed, square-faced, and looking directly into the camera lens and dealing with these issues. And so a guy comes on like a E. Michael Jones, we can deal with that and unpack the faultiness of his arguments. There was some strengths to that as well. But again, I'm better off for having these kinds of conversations. I appreciate it.
I appreciate both you guys. I'll end on this note, and then we'll move on to the Stephen A. Smith content. But I should have been better prepared. That's where I blame myself. All I knew about E. Michael Jones was the book that had been recommended to me, and was all fired up to make my point that I've been harping on about sexual lust. What after the interview, I did start looking around and seeing oh man, this guy's got some real controversy to him. I don't regret having him on. I regret not being as prepared as I should have been. I regret putting out a tweet or a clip that overshadowed an important conversation, because I do think there's parts of his argument and narrative about being prisoners of porn and how sexual liberation is politically controlling us. I think all of that is vitally important, and want to continue that conversation. And so we're going to lighten up from the rest of the show. I believe, if my memory serves, we're going to lighten up quite a bit, because I'm going to be talking about Stephen A. Smith and all the people that are coming at me. And then Steve Kim's going to come on and we'll talk some football and other things. Don't go anywhere. You're going to enjoy, well, those of you that aren't overly sensitive or big Stephen A. Smith fans, you're going to love the next 90 minutes.
It's my obligation, no hate, discrimination, raising up your hands for freedom.
Brett Favre, previously on Fearless.
I never particularly liked being chewed out, whether it be my dad or any other coach. But I got it. It was okay. I think we need more of that Bobby Knight today. My college coach for 3 years, Curly Hallman, was the meanest man I've ever met. he had a speed bag every day after practice. I think he did, and he was good. I think he did it just to intimidate the guys, and he was a hard ass. But I loved him. He was a disciplined guy. My dad was a very disciplined guy. My dad was very short on attaboys and very long on you can do better, or I'm a bust your ass.
Let's get into today's show. We'll keep it very simple. This is Whitlock versus everybody. This is Whitlock versus the world. This is me responding to all the people that have had something to say about me and Stephen A. Smith. And so some of them, it's all enlightening and entertaining. Not everybody's attacking me, but it's fascinating. It's interesting, and it will provide me an opportunity to expound on what's been going on, why it's important. But I want to give other people a voice so that, they can be heard on this show. I'm not intimidated by or fearful of engaging with my critics and people who disagree with me. Guys, I'm going to jump around a little bit, so it's important that you listen to me. We will start with Shaquille O'Neal. The first one sought 5, but I may jump around, so make sure you're listening to me, and I'll try to give you a warning about where I'm going next. But let's start with Shaquille O'Neal talking about me and Stephen A. Smith. And you just got a master's class on how to be a public figure, how to be a likable public figure, how to be a relatable public figure from Shaquille O'Neal, and how to mix in your message, what you really think, while being a relatable, fun-loving public figure. It's hard for anybody who has met Shaq, been around Shaq, who has been around his energy in terms of his self-deprecation and just fun-loving nature, not to feed off of that. And so Shaq very cleverly took no shots at Stephen A. Smith, but basically said, I have too much respect for my mother and my parents to make a fool of myself the way that Stephen A. Smith did. And then he's very honest, Shaq is, by saying, oh, I've had that emotion. I've had that feeling. I've wanted to curse and get down in the mud and just call names, blah, blah, blah. But because I was raised right, have enough reverence for my mother and my parents, I don't do that. I don't want to do anything that embarrasses her. Stephen A. Smith embarrassed himself. His parents, I think, are now passed. I know his mom has passed or whatever, but he made a fool of himself, and Shaq very politely called it out. Shaq also, wanted to let me know, and let everybody know. Now, this is funny, and this dude calling Whitlock fat bastard is funny. And he's like, I'm going to kick back and enjoy it when Whitlock responds. And this is probably my bias. I think Shaq and many others know that Stephen A. Smith is in over his head, knows that he's drowning in quicksand, and is thoroughly enjoying Stephen A. Smith fighting well outside of his physical weight class and intellectual weight class. Shaq is like, I know this ain't over. Whitlock is going to continue to bury this guy, and I am. And I don't care who does or doesn't like it, because guys like Stephen A. Smith need to be exposed. We have a group of liars and people very comfortable telling other people what they should do with their bodies. You should take the vaccine. You should vote for this person. We have people, Kyrie Irving, you tweeted a movie poster we didn't like. Stephen A. is a little attack dog, the little chihuahua that his handlers send out. Go bite Kyrie Irving on the ankles. And Shaq and these guys know it. So hats off to Shaq for handling that marvelously. We're going to move to SOT number 12. I'm going to stay in the NBA and move to SOT number 12. This is Jeff Teague. Jeff Teague is a longtime NBA player. He's from my hometown of Indianapolis. He has a podcast that I think he does from Indianapolis with a couple of guys he grew up with. They tended to side, from what I saw, we'll see what clip we pulled here, but from what I saw, because I watched the entire thing, Jeff Teague and his sidekicks took Stephen A. Smith's side and attacked me. Let's play the clip.
How y'all feel about Jason Whitlock? He's from that.
He's not from that.
Well, Indiana.
No fly zone. The product. He's the product
like
of
an
Warren.
industry plant.
He's just really a bad person. Like everybody that goes around and has interactions with him, especially in the sports media world, but he is just not a good person.
Yeah.
I hate that he's from Indiana.
I hate it. He from Warren though. Eastside, they were trying to. Come on, y'all.
Why you looking like that, Mike? Because you want Jason Whitlock on the show?
No.
He would never be on this show.
I'm about to say,
I'll rock with
fuck
Stephen.
that.
I'll rock with Stephen A.
Jason Whitlock,
Shannon.
as from a journalist standpoint, and for people who have dealt directly with him and indirectly with him, he is not a good person, and all the smut he gets is well deserved. It should be a lot more.
We don't want him at all, bro.
I don't know him like that, but just the hate that he be having for Deion Sanders, I'd be like, that's crazy.
Bro, he don't like black people. Like he
I
don't.
like all the statements y'all just said outside of he's just a bad person.
Yeah, I don't know him.
He's a bad
I don't know
person.
him. He ain't never done
Might be
nothing to
trying
me.
to show these niggas grace, bro.
But I ain't never did nothing to me, so I can't say you're a bad person. I'm just saying, like, the stuff that he say about other people is like, damn, my boy. Like, why you hating on Prime like that? Why you hating on these people like that?
2024, Mike told me to stop alienating people we might have as future guests and businesses on here. So I've been trying to do my best not to say those things.
If we
But in this special case, I'm Jason Whitlock.
Yeah,
he's a piece of
he's
shit.
not one of those.
I don't know him to call him a piece of shit. So I ain't gonna call you a
DJ
piece of
Wells
shit.
will say Jason Whitlock is a whole ass and a piece of shit.
I don't know him like that. So I ain't gonna call him that.
DJ,
So Jeff Teague is the one saying, I don't know him like that. Whoever this DJ Wells is, and DJ, I hope someone sends you this, very feminized, bro. Young brother, just very feminized. You're gossiping. You don't know me. Anybody that you allegedly know in the media, they don't know me. No one's ever heard your name. I can't imagine anybody who actually knows me knows you. Now, there may be people that say, there's a lot of people that claim that they know me, but they don't. My circle's always been tight and small. The ridiculousness. Again, these are guys sitting in Indianapolis, my hometown. Jason Whitlock hates black people. It's retarded. It's woman gossip talk. Jeff T, be careful about your circle, or tighten up your circle, or man up your circle. 3 dudes sitting around like they at a kitchen table gossiping like it's Jada Pinkett Smith and they at the red table talking about someone they don't know. I mean, he's a bad person. And Jeff Teague's smart enough to say, I don't know him like that. Y'all can say that. And then this dude, based off gossip with who knows who, Jason Whitlock don't like black people? And y'all from Indianapolis? And y'all called out my high school? All the Warren Central? All the help I've provided Warren Central and the kids at Warren Central? Are you kidding me? And all because I criticized Deion Sanders? You think Deion Sanders is spending any money on the Far East Side of Indianapolis, helping any kids over there? This is a joke. Y'all go to 38th and Sherman, the Masterpiece Lounge, and tell them people, yeah, Jason Whitlock don't like us. He didn't spend every waking moment that he was in Indianapolis around his father and on 38th and Sherman. Just cut it out. You're uninformed kids. You're not man enough for this conversation, and you're not smart enough just to stay out of the conversation. Instead, you act like 3 women sitting around talking. I give Jeff Teague credit for backing out of some of it. But control your groupies. Control your minions. They just very, very childish. Very, very childish and very, very feminine. The whole no-fly zone. Stop. I got 56 years of history in Indianapolis. Just stop. And I'm not the type to sit around and talk about what I do, but receipts laying all over the far east side of Indianapolis, Warren Central. So let me move on to another NBA player, Gilbert Arenas. Not that Gilbert knows much of what he's talking about. This is SOT number 13. Let's play Gilbert Arenas. Let's see what he has to say.
Did Stephen A go too far, though, with the comments? You said he's professional.
No.
Calling him a bitch.
No,
he didn't call him a bitch. You bitch. you bitch, not just the regular one.
Exactly what he deserves.
Oh, for real?
Yes. He's horrible. Like, the things that he says, the stances that he takes, he's just very hateful. Like,
oh, he's one of those.
Yeah, it's like nothing comes from any logic, analytics, nothing. It's like just pure like hate and like just mean. Like he's a mean little fat man. Like
so last.
He must be that bad.
Yeah.
Look at
Yeah.
We got Lexie turned up.
Don't let me find that.
We got friendship bracelets and Lexie turned up.
Don't let us find that motherfucker.
I told you he be talking crazy. Like I think one day they put some women's basketball thing on like the front page of ES. It was like mid-tournament.
Yeah.
And he was like, why is this on here? Like no one wants to see this. He calls people who support women's sports like woke. Like
not just sports fans.
Just not sports
fans.
Jeff Teague in your group, did you see the way that woman sounded? That's how y'all sounded. This is, again, there's just no logic to anything he says. It's just mean and hurtful. There's no logic to it. I get her acting like an uninformed woman. I get it. She's part of that matriarchal feminist movement that has captured most of the black community. I get it. She's one of them Yas queens. She thinks she's the belle of the ball and, the crown jewel of everything. And Gilbert Arenas and all these athletes all think they're doing everybody a great service and they're doing what's popular. Hey, let's sit an uninformed woman in the middle of a man's conversation. And then let's all conversate, because that's the thing to do. That's what everybody's into. That's what's popular now. That's what the corporate media handlers want us to do. And so her being uninformed, she sets the table, because Gilbert Arenas clearly doesn't know anything about me other than I'm, friendly with Kwame Brown and a supporter of Kwame Brown. That's pretty much the only thing he knows. But she sets the table for an uninformed conversation, because, young lady, all of my arguments, everything you're complaining about, come from a biblical worldview. And maybe I'm misinterpreting the Bible or misrepresenting the Bible, but that is the foundation of my logic. And so when you're sitting there complaining about the arguments that I make on this show, or the arguments that bother you, that you hear about I make, what you're objecting to is, man, Jason Whitlock uses the Bible to argue things I disagree with. Say that. But to argue that there's no logic, reason, or facts to the arguments that I put forth is just totally uninformed and clueless. And it's actually wicked and devilish. Because I probably tend to think you know exactly where my point of view comes from, but you're trying to mislead people and you don't want to deal with the fact that you're out of line with the Bible. If you have any Christian faith or religious faith at all, and you're there to distract 2 or 3 men. Let's move them off a biblical worldview. Let's move them away from masculinity and taking responsibility for the male leadership that God granted to men. This all connects, and this will be the connecting thread in all of this and why people don't get me or pretend not to get me. Now, I could be sitting on this show, and I'm open to that discussion. And we have people on this show constantly that will push back. Man, I don't think that's right what you're saying there. I don't know if that aligns with the Bible, blah, blah, blah. More than open to have that discussion. But people sitting around pretending like they don't know where I'm coming from, that's a lie. They know it. It's done to distract. It's done to make you not ever think about, what does God think about the positions I'm taking? And that's how you sit up there in these little feminized conversations. And that's how you end up giving in to emotion as men. You look at Stephen A. Smith melt down like a little schoolgirl and just go, he's fat and nobody likes him. And as a man, that resonates with you. You looking, Stephen A. Smith is a 56-year-old, allegedly grown man. Someone questioned, did a book review of his book, and his response was to do a 50-minute rant. Jason Whitlock, he's fat. And Joey and Cindy and Bobby, they don't like Jason Whitlock. No one likes Jason Whitlock. There's no properly educated, there's no rational, logical man that hears Stephen A. Smith do a 50-minute third grade schoolgirl meltdown and would co-sign any of it. Wouldn't be any man in his proper mind would be repulsed by it. But some of y'all are co-signing for it because you don't understand how you've been emasculated and how your mindset has been emasculated. Gil, tell that woman to get up out of your NBA conversations that she don't know nothing about. She ain't played in the NBA. Maybe she played in the WNBA. Maybe she played in college basketball. I don't know. I don't know her. She don't know me. But she ain't built for no man's conversation. Period. End of story. We will stay in the NBA, I believe. And let's go to SOT number 8, Steven Jackson. Play that clip.
Don't be wrong, every chance he got, man. I think every time I'm on the show with him, he made a point to say the worst shit he could say to go against black people. Like, one thing people don't understand, like to hate on somebody, that takes effort. To spread love, that takes no effort. But to hate on somebody, you got to actually sit there and start and build up some shit to actually hate on somebody. And that's what he does, right? He builds up the hate, you know what I'm saying? Instead of just being speaking his real opinion on shit, he always try to go to the left side of it. And that's what I don't respect about him.
So that's Steven Jackson, and his comments surprised me slightly. Slightly, just because they're so inaccurate and contradict the truth of our former relationship at Fox Sports. And so I get why, and this is why I just say somewhat surprised me. I get why Steven Jackson would say that. He's very close, obviously, and attached to George Floyd. And he grew up with him, close to him. The George Floyd situation brought Steven Jackson some fame and notoriety and attention. And so my narrative on George Floyd, that he died of a fentanyl overdose and that the Derek Chauvin deal is a joke and a false narrative, I can get why that would upset Steven Jackson. And I say that authentically because as I've told many of you all and have said for years, in 2012, I had a relative killed by sheriff's officers in Indianapolis, Anton Butler. You can go look it up. The police say he died of a drug overdose. Me and my family, we disagree with that. He was tasered or basically electrocuted in the rain. That's our narrative. And so if someone was going on TV and saying, no, Anton died of a drug overdose, it would bother me. So to some degree, I get Steven Jackson here. But when it comes to truth of what he just said, anytime he was on Fox Sports, Speak for Yourself with me, I rubbed him the wrong way. That's just dishonest. I did nothing but give Steven Jackson what I thought was sound advice on how to move his career forward. And he thanked me for that. I can remember Steven Jackson showed up, and I'm not dry snitching, I'm just telling the truth. His show's called All the Smoke. So I'm not saying anything about Steven Jackson that anyone didn't know. But he walked into the studio and walked on set smelling like a blizzard of marijuana smoke. And I was like, pulled him to the side, and was like, hey man, you know, no problem with you smoking weed, but it's a bad look, man, to show up to work smelling like that much weed. Steve, you know, it's going to make executives hesitant to want to invest in you. Steve, you shouldn't do that. He thanked me for that and said he'd never do it again. I took Steve Jackson, bunch of guys, out to dinner in Los Angeles. Steve Jackson and I were very friendly and used to text back and forth. And all. This is prior to me leaving Fox at the end of May 2020 or whenever that happened, 1st of May, I can't remember. But this was very friendly. Took him out to dinner because I know exactly who Steven Jackson is. He's, I believe, a member of the Bloods gang, legitimately. And so I took him to dinner because I know a lot of really interesting people from interesting backgrounds through my relationship with Jim Brown, the former NFL legend, and his America I Can program. I've met some of any and everybody in Los Angeles, whether celebrity world or in the gang world, through Jim Jackson and his America I Can program, because they work with ex-gang members. And so one of my very good friends and Jim Brown's right-hand man, Rockhead Johnson, you can go look him up. There's plenty of information of Rockhead Johnson on the internet, including his criminal history, gang affiliations. He's what they call an OG, but he was Jim Brown's right-hand man and someone to this day I respect dearly, have supported his, he's been an AAU coach and blah, blah, but you know, Rock probably did 20 inside California prisons. And so I thought Rock would be someone interesting for Steven Jackson to go to dinner with, and we did go to dinner and you know, had a good time. I Maestro's, I believe, in Beverly Hills we went to, and so I'm just my relationship with Steven Jackson before George Floyd, there was no disharmony. There was me being honest with him. Hey man, you clean up this behavior. You should do this. You should do that. If you want to get involved with, you know, TV at a high level, you know, here's my advice. What I didn't know at the time, and I'm giving him his advice, is just how rapidly TV was moving in the direction of people with more shady backgrounds, far more shady than mine. And so the wind was actually blowing the direction of, like, the more dirt they have on you, the more they wanted you. And so probably some of my advice, based off of what Showtime invested in and calling the show All the Smoke, my advice was probably bad. I didn't know it. But, you know, Showtime clearly wanted a gang member drug user. And I'm not saying these things disparagingly because, again, if I told you about all of my friends, these descriptions would fit them as well. And I've told y'all previously about Strip Club Rick. Very good friends with Suge Knight because they both wore red and they both were affiliated with the exact same gang. So I'm not saying this disparagingly, but that's where TV has moved. That in order for them to really want to invest in you, corporate media, you have to have a criminal element if you're black. And go back to the conversation I had yesterday with E. Michael Jones, who's in charge of TV, what they're investing in. Guys like me don't fit the profile. Only thing on my criminal record was 18, 19, 20 years old, 30 some odd years ago. I got arrested for driving with a suspended license. Spent 7-8 hours in jail. I don't fit the profile. For corporate TV, as I told you all yesterday, I believe Jesus Christ is my Lord and Savior. That's not what they're investing in corporate television. The people that run it don't believe Jesus Christ is their Lord and Savior, and they are investing in criminals. So I gave Steven Jackson some bad advice. He was going down the right path. Play up criminality, play up your drug use. Go take pictures or post videos of yourself checking in with O-Block as a 40-year-old man. That's what they want. But I don't understand why Stephen Jackson would, in his words, cap like that. Every time we're on TV, I rub you the wrong way, and I'm just doubling down on criticizing black people. We're living in a very dishonest time. And as I said, I'm sympathetic. I get why Stephen Jackson at this time doesn't like me. I'm too critical of George Floyd. George Floyd, personal friend of his. George Floyd is what helped him elevate his level of fame. I get it. But Steve, you just say that. I don't like what this dude said about George Floyd. I don't like a lot of things he says. F Jason Whitlock. Just leave it at that. But, every time we on TV, I rubbed you the wrong way. Cap. Let me take a break before I move on to another NBA player. I want to not take a break. I want to tell you guys about Blaze TV's newest endeavor. Blaze TV is debuting the second episode of our docuseries, Blaze Originals, where Glenn Beck traveled to the quickly evolving Liberty County, Texas, to give you the real story of Colony Ridge. Colony Ridge is growing fast, extremely fast, at a rate of 200 lots per week. And based on what Glenn and the Blaze Originals team observed firsthand, the overwhelming percentage of residents are Spanish-speaking non-citizens. Glenn spoke with the developer, John Harris, and while he stated approximately 35,000 people live there, that contradicted what the actual people on the ground said. There's more than twice that. If nothing is done about this, there will be hundreds of thousands of people living in Colony Ridge in just a few years. And that's where you come in. Both the right and left-wing media have given vastly conflicting reports on Colony Ridge, and Blaze TV couldn't have traveled there to get the real story without your support. This documentary is only the beginning of our Blaze Original series exposing corruption and what's really going on in our country, and we can't do these projects and productions without your help. That's why, if you aren't already a subscriber to Blaze TV, subscribe now for just $30 off an annual subscription by visiting blazeoriginals.com and use the promo code Colony Ridge. In this episode, Glenn addresses all the rumors and brings you the truth. Is Colony Ridge specifically targeting illegal immigrants to take up residency? What is the toll on the existing residents? Is any of this even legal? And would you believe me if I told you that Colony Ridge could fundamentally change the political landscape of Texas and even the nation forever? Colony Ridge poses an enormous threat to the future of our country. And again, we could not have made the real story of Colony Ridge without your support. So if you want to see this episode and future installments, help support the work we're doing by visiting blazeoriginals.com today and subscribe using the code ColonyRidge for $30 off your annual subscription. Let's go back to SOT number 7. It's Matt Barnes, Steven Jackson's partner in crime on All the Smoke. Let's hear from Matt Barnes.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. Very intelligent dude, but I feel like he goes out of his way to attack the black community, to attack people in the black, whether it be athletes or entertainers or even and fellow members of the media. He goes out of his way to attack the black side of it and antagonize people on these larger platforms because he wore his welcome out, on a major platform. So it's just weird. His energy is weird, but he's found a fan base that loves that because it's weird. Every once in a while, I'll go and kind of look at. I looked in his comments after the Stephen A. shit, and just to see kind of he's on that Fox News side, and those people love any kind of puppet black person that will attack blacks and attack this side, and he's found a home with that. But if you look at you look at his comments, there's a line in the sand. You could see the way he moves and who supports him, and the people that are against him and what they look like.
So, Matt Barnes, I know dislikes me and has every reason to. I don't think Matt Barnes is very smart. I think he has no emotional control. I think that he's the typical emasculated, feminized professional athlete that's kind of commonplace. I don't know how he was raised, but he seems to be undiscipled by a man, and that's why he flies off the handle and resorts to violence because he can't think his way through certain situations. But give Matt, and I think Steven Jackson let him in, crediting me for my intelligence. But this speaks to what he and Steven Jackson are doing here is part of my criticism with putting all of these athletes installing them in these positions of influence. And this is intentional. And I'm going to say once again, it connects to E. Michael Jones's point on yesterday's show. If you haven't seen that show, go watch E. Michael Jones's interview with this show from yesterday and how the Hollywood media structure and system is installing people, unqualified people that don't know the history, don't have any facts, but they have controversial backgrounds. They'll say anything. They're not attached to truth. And so some of this is just out of pure ignorance on Matt Barnes' part. There's no malicious intent. But he thinks, and Steven Jackson thinks, they're like, man, Jason Whitlock, he just attacks black celebrities and media people, and that's all he does. There's no one who has an accurate view of what I've done in the past and what I do today. There's no one who would accurately come to the assumption like, man, Whitlock only attacks black athletes and black celebrities. It's just an impossibility, and particularly when it comes to the media. I've been attacking the media and high-profile, elite, powerful people throughout my entire career. Now, the emasculated, feminized, uninformed crowd who have bought all the way into racial idolatry, they have no clue of all the white media people that I've treated in writing, not treated, but just criticized in writing, far more than Stephen A. Smith. And I've talked about it on the show, but just in case Matt Barnes comes over here checking the comments or checking out what I had to say about him, but like Mitch Albom is as accomplished a sports writer in the history of newspapers. They've given this man every award, basically that a sports writer can be given multiple times, maybe dozens of times. I used to shred this dude. Shredded his fantasy book, Fab Five. Mitch Albom has never liked me. The entire that's what was so comical about Stephen A. Smith talking about Jemele Hill don't like Jason, and this Chris Broussard doesn't like Jason, and that person doesn't like Jason. And white people in the media were sitting around like, yeah, join the crowd. We don't like Jason either. And we've been saying it for 30 years because I've always attacked the media. Long before Trump ever said fake news, I was clowning the media and all the high-profile people in the media, clowning them. And there was a time when all the high-profile people in the media, 98% of them were white. And I was clowning them. Go find out if Mike Lupica likes me. I mean, I've talked about it, Joe Posnanski, Selena Roberts, but I've talked all the sports figures in Kansas City, from Marty Schottenheimer to Carl Peterson to Scott Pioli when he was there. They're laughing at you all, go, Jason only attacked black people. You're not man enough for the position they've installed you at. You don't understand that criticism goes along with having a position of power and authority and influence. And so you think everybody should just kiss your rear end. And your ears and eyes are only tuned to see when someone black with power and influence and a position of authority gets attacked. You're completely oblivious. Go ask Dave Portnoy that runs Barstool if he likes me and if I haven't attacked him. Pat McAfee, Katie Nolan. These guys are clueless. But that's why they've been installed. That's why the whole system supports them. They're simple-minded. Yes, Matt Barnes is, and Matt, I give you credit for recognizing my intelligence. Give me credit for recognizing your lack of intelligence. You don't know what you're talking about. You're completely uninformed. Stephen Jackson, it applies to you. Many others. Stephen A. Smith, completely uninformed and whiny. And you all are a group of men that the only reason why you would look at Stephen A. Smith whining like a little child, a little girl, and say, you know what, this is my opportunity to talk about how Whitlock rubbed me the wrong way and how Whitlock's always attacking black people. Because any real man would look and say, why is this one dude at 56-year-old whining like a little schoolgirl? He's fat and nobody likes him. And why am I, with no information, no research, sitting around, yeah, Jason Whitlock only attacks black people. He's part of that Fox News crowd. And you can tell by the comments. Look at the people who like Jason Whitlock. They all look the same. These guys all answer to people who don't believe Jesus Christ is their Lord and Savior. And so their handlers have told them that Jason Whitlock, you guys run out there and say he only attacks black people. No, Jason Whitlock, throughout my entire career, and now most especially over the last 5 to 6 years, if your worldview, if your actions incredibly contradict the words written in the Bible, I'm going to criticize you. That's going to happen. It's not based on skin color. It's based on that Bible. Everybody knows it. You can quit lying about it. Just come out of the closet. We're Luciferians. We're demonic. We answer to, we're controlled by people who reject Jesus Christ as their Lord and personal Savior. And so it is our job to run out here and convince other black people that Jason Whitlock, he's the bad guy. Those of us in this secular Luciferian cult, we're the good guys. Those of us in gangs, we're the good guys. Those of us that stay high 24/7, we're the good guys with the great advice. We're on your side. Jason's a puppet. He's controlled by when they're controlled by. E. Michael Jones. He told you what's going on. I've been telling you. Anybody with common sense can see what's going on. You don't need E. Michael Jones to co-sign it. You just need common sense. Look at their words, evaluate them on their actions. Evaluate me on mine. If your approach, so here's how Stephen A. has gotten crossways with me. He's a pathological liar. And anybody that's against truth is against God. God is truth. The truth shall set you free. God has told us to be obedient and a slave to truth. God wants us in alignment with truth. And so when I look at people who cannot be honest, who tell little tiny lies and turn them into big, enormous lies and lie about everything, nearly everything that comes out of their mouth is a lie. I'm just like Katt Williams. This is an industry plant. And so the other industry plants, Matt Barnes, Steven Jackson, Stephen A. Smith, they're rallying around Stephen A. Smith by attacking me and not dealing with who they actually are. And but Whitlock's the puppet. Now, I know you see all these puppet strings on me, but Whitlock's the real puppet. Miss me. Miss me with all of it. Let's see what my guy Marcellus Wiley had to say. Let's go to SOT number 9.
How do you call BS on somebody without somebody else saying you're hating, clout chasing, etc.? I think this is going to be the year of truth tellers. You know, this seems like the year of those who come out. Whether you get exposed or not, whoever tells the truth is going to be the winner in the conversation. So I'm not saying Stephen A. Smith is lying. I'm not saying that. But I know there's no way, the way I heard that story, he's telling the truth. You understand the difference? Okay, he ain't lying. I ain't saying you're lying. He's just not telling the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. Ain't no way. Let me tell you why. Not that story, not that version can be accurate. Now, maybe Stephen A. Smith just got bored or didn't want to bore us with the details of that story, so he didn't fill it in, he didn't give it the proper color, perspective, etc. But ain't no way somebody traveled to a school and played in a scrimmage. I don't give a damn how many shots you make. You make all the shots. Forget 17 in a row. You make every single shot and then walk away from that scrimmage with that scholarship. Let me tell you, there's no way that happens. Why? Because I've never heard of it. I've never witnessed it. I've never even been around anything like that. Let me tell you, in this experience, when you're going to do a tryout, not a single tryout ever has ended in the moment and they like, this is yours. Want to know why? Because the tryout is to convince them and they still got to go back and make sure that that opportunity is for you. You ain't the only one trying out. When are we having all tryouts, all comers, just for you? Nah, even when you see pro days, combines, it's always other people. Regionals, you know, they do them national combines, etc. There's always somebody else going. Now, I'm not gonna go into the details of this, so that's why I'm like, Stephen A. Smith may not be lying, but that version can't be the full truth. So
Well, not surprised that Marcellus would stick to the truth. He's a former athlete. He can smell the total BS in Stephen A's tryout story. The only thing I would say to Marcellus and everybody else, these lies run so much deeper than just the tryout. The tryout is just the tip of the iceberg. See, we've been playing this week all kinds of videos of just Stephen A. just telling enormous stuff. I'm protected by drug dealers. When I was a little kid, they said, Stephen A., don't touch him. No one touched Stephen A. He can't be touched. We see so much potential in Stephen A. When someone lets all these exaggerations and lies, because this whole thing of drug dealers were protecting Stephen A. That's a lot. And I can't wait for Marcellus, do yourself a favor. Marcellus grew up in South Central Los Angeles. Go listen to Stephen A's story. Do we have the clip? Can we grab the clip from let me play it for Marcellus if we have it. Didn't we play it yesterday, the drug dealing deal? Did we not play it yesterday? I'm so confused. I know we have it. We'll need a second. But Marcellus, I want to play you this clip of Stephen A. talking about how he was protected in his neighborhood by the killer drug kingpin who lived across the street. And Stephen A. in high school was like, he said he graduated high school at 5'9", 130 pounds. He said he got held back in fourth grade. I got another video where he said his high school counselor laughed out loud at the thought of Stephen A. trying to go to college. But listen to Stephen A., who made his high school basketball team as a senior in high school at 5'9", 130 pounds, was only on the team for a month or two, who dyslexic, and people thought he was stupid, and he writes in his book how he got teased for being stupid. Listen to him talk about how the drug dealers in Hollis, Queens protected him.
That we just finished talking about when I talk about how, I'm not snitching, I'm not talking, I'm not getting into people's personal business or whatever. I grew up with that code. One of the biggest drug dealers in Hollis literally lived directly across the street from me, and he was a killer. And it was understood, Steve is not to be touched. You got dealers in Hollis, Steve is not to be touched. They understood that there was potential in me, and they literally threatened they were going to whip my ass if they ever saw me on the corner involved in the drug game in any way. They said we didn't have a choice.
How did they know? How did they know that about you?
They would see me on the basketball court. First of all, the level of diligence that I put forth, that I'd shoot like 300 J's a day and stuff like that. They'd see me in school. They know I came home, I'd do my homework, put in the work, whatever. They knew that I wasn't trying to be about that life. And so their whole mentality was, you got your mother there, you got your 4 older sisters there, active part of your life. You got a support system. You don't have to do this. We did. We made our choice. But we ain't gonna let you make this choice. And literally, I've had several of them tell me, we will f you up. Do not be on this corner. Do not be doing this. Do not be gonna bust your ass. Wow. And they meant it. And I knew they meant it. And so they would sit up there, they'd let me shoot, stuff like that. It would get dark. They had to get into their game. They said, all right, it's time for you to go. But it was understood. People in the neighborhood, it was widely known, do not touch me with that.
Marcellus, please, if you need me to send you that clip, but you got to find it, take it off this show, whatever. But I just would love to hear your response to that. Having grown up in Compton, would love to hear you break down Stephen A. Smith, not to be touched. Dude is 5'9", 130 pounds, held back in fourth grade, but they could see that he went to school and did his homework. They could see him out there shooting jumpers. Don't touch him. This dude is headed for the NBA. He's headed for... Have at it, Marcellus. Let me move on to sock number 10. Here's Dan Lebercard talking about me.
this was, Jason Whitlock was, and I need to be careful here because this is not merely a person I have cared about. This is a person, Jason Whitlock, that has recently a month ago, and he's been slaughtering me and a lot of journalists I care about publicly for a long time. I called him a month ago several times, leaving messages just to see if he's okay. And I haven't talked to him in a long ass time because some of this stuff hurts. My family knows Jason Whitlock. My brother spent time with Jason Whitlock, and we were friends. And I like to think that whether it's David Sampson or Jason Whitlock or anyone, that I try to see the best in people and that people are flawed and that people are confused. And I don't want to turn this into a defense of Jason Whitlock because he's made me super angry. I've got friends of mine who, if they saw him, they would beat him up in the street.
On sight?
Yes.
Punch him right in the face.
Multiple friends I have that are so mad on my behalf at what's happened here when I tried very hard to care for this person. This part you guys will find funny. I'm pretty sure that the reason he turned on me is because of something Stugat said. It ain't anything I've ever said publicly about him.
A lot to unpack there. Dan has friends who will beat me up. How old are these friends? Seriously, I mean, Dan's my age, maybe a year younger. How old are these people? Beat me up? How much common sense do these people have? As I think I've shared, I can't remember I've had, but again, I'm 56. I have no interest in fighting, none. Maybe there's other 50s that do, and more power to you. But there's a reason I moved to a red state. You have the right to defend yourself. And as a 56-year-old, again, my fighting days are done. Dan lives in Florida. They got stand your ground. Whoever, maybe I've heard the Mike Ryan guy, the little kid on his show, talk about how he would jump on me and beat me up or whatever. Good luck. And, have at it. I'll be in Florida, I believe, in early February. But that's childish and stupid. The one thing I do like that Dan said here is that I've been slaughtering people in the media that he cares about for years. And so I like the honesty of that because I have been slaughtering people in the media for years. And Dan can testify. And Dan was friends with me while I was slaughtering Mike Lupica, Mitch Albom, Selena Roberts, Joe Posnanski. I can remember being on the phone with Dan when I kept telling him that Joe Posnanski has no idea what he's going to do with this Joe Paterno book. He's not a journalist. He's not built for this. And I remember Dan having to acknowledge that, Dan, you were right about Joe Posnanski. That was an awful book. So I've been slaughtering people in the media for years. So Dan, if you want to testify to that, please go ahead. I can't remember the other parties. I was friends with his brother. That's one thing I can authentically say about Dan is, Dan does authentically care about his brother, but the Dan is doing something that he keeps trying to evaluate me as it relates to what happened in our friendship. I can't see him, or I haven't heard him, because he's made a lot of public statements and all this other stuff. And someone's gonna have to refresh my memory on me slaughtering Dan. I do remember slaughtering him for the way that him and his little minions piled on Michelle Tafoya and called him out for that a year or two ago. I do remember that. But what Dan seems incapable of, at least from a distance, because again, just like he said, we haven't talked in years, is like, does he ever evaluate himself? Or does he put himself on a pedestal and he's perfect and he's done nothing wrong? And that seems very important to him, to convince himself that he's perfect. He's been the perfect friend. He's done nothing wrong. And Jason Whitlock's just this horrible person that turned on me because, I sat and giggled as Stu Gatz lied about Colin Cowherd and Jason Whitlock. And that was just I'm not going to get into it and argue it all over air, but, Dan, if you get this clip or one of your minions gives it to you, Dan, there's a mirror that we all have. I stand in front of it every day. I come on this show and talk about the mistakes that I've made constantly. And perhaps you only get the highlights when once every 3 or 4 months, maybe once every 6 months, where something you happen on your show comes up on this show. But for the most part, anybody that watches this show accurately, no one gets judged more harshly than me, by me. But you do you. Let's move to SOT number 11, Patrick Bet-David.
Yeah, there's a lot of F words you could use for Jason Whitlock. Fearless ain't one of them. I'd go fat, fluffy, fake. According to Stephen A. Smith, he's an effing POS. We all get it.
Yeah.
Fearless ain't the word, though. Sorry, Jason.
What do you think?
I don't know. I'm gonna no comments on this one.
What the hell did you Joe?
Everybody said what they said about him. Now, listen, my experience with him, I was confused because if somebody's a gamer and the whole situation was we were going to have a podcast here and we already said our thoughts on that. I don't want to revisit that.
Yeah.
But in a situation like this, where I think Whitlock was trying to have his viral Katt Williams moment, but nobody cared.
Mm-hmm.
Meaning
Yeah.
he thought he's Katt Williams. And the market said, bro, you're not,
Fat Williams.
You're not Katt Williams, bro.
Yeah.
You're not Katt Williams. There's Katt Williams, then there's you are not at the Katt Williams category.
No.
Maybe he thinks he is. Okay? Maybe he thinks he is. Maybe he's gonna leak other things. Maybe he's gonna bring up other stories. Great. But the inspiration of him wanting to be the modern day Katt Williams of the sports radio. It fell
horrible.
However, in his credit, he did get
eyeballs.
Stephen A. to respond to him.
1,000%.
And good for you if you're doing that, but it wasn't the right kind of response you want to get.
So, Patrick Bet-David is a plant, and when I'm done with Stephen A. Smith, I'm gonna go into detail about where Patrick Bet-David came from and why he's a plant. But you just don't come from out of nowhere. I'm some Iraqi or Iranian with the last name Bet-David. But we'll get into Patrick Bet-David perhaps in some detail at some point in 2024. But he's also just not very smart. I wanted to have my Katt Williams moment. How is anything that I did really analogous in that sense? Did I piggyback off of Katt Williams to have a discussion about Stephen A. Smith? Yes. But I sit at a desk and do a show solo. Katt Williams went on someone else's podcast, a popular podcast, and talked about a lot of people within the industry. A lot of people within the comedy industry, and told stories and talked about movies and all that other stuff. I sat here and talked about Stephen A. Smith and went over Stephen A. Smith's background and his memoir and did basically a book review and called BS on Stephen A. Smith's backstory and started walking you through like, man, this guy's really uncomfortable with the truth. And so I'm in the sports media. I talked about someone in the sports media. I talked about someone in my area of expertise. And it wasn't at all to be Katt Williams. Now, I used Katt as the jumping off point. But I wasn't being interviewed by anybody, and my intent wasn't to, again, it wasn't this wide potpourri of Steve Harvey and Kevin Hart and Cedric the Entertainer. I mean, there had to be Chris Tucker. There had to be like 15, 20 people that Katt Williams talked about. He cast a wide net and got everybody in that wide net to respond. I talked about Stephen A. Smith, one person, walked you through his book, his memoir, and explained to you like, hey, does it make sense that he's at the top of the sports media world? So when I say Patrick Bet-David isn't very smart, maybe I'm being a bit untrue there. Maybe I'm saying Patrick Bet-David isn't very honest. Because no smart person, no rational person would watch what I did and say, yeah, he was trying to have a Katt Williams moment. Any rational person could critically think and see, like, nah, that's not what he's doing. He's calling out one person in his industry and pointing out that, hey, Katt Williams may be right. This is going on in other industries. And perhaps it's going on in the podcast world. And Patrick Bet-David is an industry plant. Perhaps he came from out of nowhere with some unbelievable story. And now all of a sudden, he's in a place of influence where his staff can sit around and I believe someone on his staff, on his team, is part of that group that doesn't believe Jesus Christ is their Lord and Savior. And they can sit there and mock me. Oh, he's fat, he's fluffy, he's this, he's that. I don't know who that dude is. I don't know who he is. People that follow the show perhaps do. But it's all, everything that Patrick Bet-David is doing as a plant is, hey, let's take attention away from these obvious facts that Jason Whitlock has brought out, that Stephen A's backstory raises all kinds of questions about Stephen A., ESPN, Winston-Salem State, the people running around pretending to be Stephen A's former college teammates. Why is this elaborate ruse going on? A smart person or an honest person, an honest person would be like, hey, I don't like Jason Whitlock because he got mad when I brought him down here on dishonest, under a dishonest principle or a dishonest method, and I tried to put him in a room in some kind of gotcha interview with Roland Martin. Again, this is how you know people are plants. Now, you're allegedly a conservative, but you're in cahoots with Roland Martin, some troll of mine, who I've had at my house for a 2-hour interview out in Los Angeles. And you're wondering why I don't want to circle back to this clown? Anybody can go watch the interview. Roland Martin rolls it out there. He just re-rolled it out there, I believe, in December. Doesn't let you get a word in edgewise, isn't interested in a legitimate conversation, has all his little... Roland Martin's a plant. He's a puppet for the Democratic Party. And Patrick Bet-David is in cahoots, trying to set up some confrontation on his podcast between me and Roland Martin. These plants protect and work with other plants. And so instead of going, wow, this is fascinating. I don't like Whitlock, but this is fascinating, these questions he's raised about Stephen A. Smith, because they make no sense. Instead of doing that, let's attack Whitlock. That's a plant covering for a plant. But at some point, I'll go into a little deeper detail on that. Let me keep it. Let's hear from Jemele Hill, SOT number 14.
Stephen A. was correct. When the Undefeated started, he reached out to a bunch of us to see if we wanted to work, with the Undefeated. He and I have a particular, we were at one point, I would have considered us to be friends, and that dissolved for a number of reasons, some of which I don't necessarily feel like I want to dig up the bones on, but, only to a certain degree to make my point. But by that time, we were not even, wouldn't even acknowledge each other probably in the same room on that level. And he reached out to me. He apologized and said that it was a bad look to have two Black people in our position to be beefing and that he would like me to do some work with the Undefeated. Now, I thought that it was such a terrible idea for Skipper and to hire him to do this. I don't know why he did. And I told Skipper that. I mean, I told him that at the time that, like, this was not.
We've learned it's Dan's fault, Jemele. We've learned today it's Dan's fault.
Wait. I found that out later, and I almost started to be like, Dan, like,
us
dude,
too.
what would make you think this was a good idea?
God damn it, Dan.
This is what happened, Jemele. This is what happened. It wasn't just me; it was me and Simmons, right? It's Whitlock.
I know. I heard that too. And Bill Simmons.
Yeah, Whitlock asked us to make a call vouching for him as a journalist, and we did. And I made not the joke, but I just said earlier in the show, how's that for privilege? How does the black guy get power? It's the black guy who's against all the other black people, chosen by the two white guys and the Cuban guy.
That is my main question to you, Dan. Did you ask any black people about like?
I didn't. Well, but no, but I no.
Wow. You know, this is the first time I watched that Jemele clip in real time. I had not seen this. I did not know she said this. Before I get to Jemele, I just want to. Whitlock asked us to make a call. This is according to Dan. And Dan Le Batard at this time, 2013, at that time, best friend in the industry. So when John Skipper reached out to me, of course I would, hey, Dan, John Skipper reached out to me, blah, blah, blah. What do you think? This, that, and the third. Dan volunteered. I didn't ask. Dan, hey, I'm tight with Skipper. Let me call him. I will vouch for you. I think it's a great idea. But again, he uses the word us intentionally because he's now roping Bill Simmons into this. I did not call Bill Simmons and ask him to do anything as it related to me and the Undefeated. Nothing. Went on his podcast and talked about it, but asking Bill Simmons to do anything, no, did not happen. It's a complete lie. Didn't ask Dan. He volunteered because he wanted me to get that job. Dan had no illusions at that time about my relationship with anybody in the media. From Jemele Hill to Mike Lupica to Mitch, everybody knows my entire reputation throughout my entire career from 94, but it actually started in 92 in Ann Arbor because that's when I started criticizing Mitch Albom. It's always been my brand to criticize the media. Always. Long before Trump. Dan knew all of this. Everybody knew all this. I was always a polarizing figure in the media among black and white journalists. I got stalked. Jeff Pearlman. I hate to even call his name, but again, he used to work for Sports Illustrated. He's been a stalker of mine for years. White dude. They're lying. Now, Jemele Hill. First I heard it. Complete, total, 1,000% fabrication. Reached out to her to apologize. Are you kidding me? You know how long I've been telling the story publicly about what happened between me and Jemele Hill? It's probably been 10 years. Maybe 15. She even said we wouldn't even acknowledge each other because I would not acknowledge her. She would try to engage with me, but I would not. And she's right. Used to be friendly. When she first I was very supportive when she first got into column writing down in Orlando. Trying to help her out, trying to give her guidance. And then when the 2007 situation happened and I got on Oprah Winfrey, Jemele Hill melted down. I've told the story a million times. Called the guy, Jason McIntyre at the Big Lead, emailing him, trying to get him to write trash on me because, say, Whitlock out here pretending like he's the moral authority of black. This is in 2007. I just make sure y'all keep the date. He's trying to like he's the moral authority on black people, criticizing us when he's running around screwing strippers. And again, I've told the story. She was out to dinner with a friend of mine, Terrence Harris, and I believe Leon Carter was there as well. And Terrence Harris, for a friend of mine, stupid reasons, telling my business. I talked to him earlier that day. I was down in Atlanta, and being the idiot I was in 2007, I was bragging to him about some stripper that I'd met in Atlanta, went out drinking and partying with, bragging to him about it. He goes and tells her. She thinks, I'm going to go tell the big lead and get him to write about it. Jason McIntyre at that time, and we were friends, and he told me. And I've never spoken to Jemele Hill since, and I certainly, in no way, called her to apologize. Because when I was told this story, I was like, other than on TV or on radio or on a podcast, Jemele Hill will never hear my voice again. I don't trust her. She's a snake. But for reasons I don't want to go into, I'm not going to dig into it. I'm not going to go into it. These people are so comfortable lying. It's embarrassing. And that's why I keep my distance. Because the truth ain't in them. I don't know how many receipts I got. Stephen A. Smith, Whitlock wrote me an email begging for me to work for him and all this other stuff. I showed y'all the email. The truth ain't in them. And that's why they want to avoid the level of fraudulence I've exposed about Stephen A. Smith. Because they're just like him. And if he can get away with all them lies, they're hoping they can get away with half as many. See what the Breakfast Club had to say. SOT 16.
I wonder how much of this is Stephen A. Smith being actually upset, or how much of this is Stephen A. using Jason Whitlock for content. Not that Stephen A. needs it, you know what I mean? And I'm not mad at any of it, but I just wonder because Shannon Sharpe had a great week with the Katt Williams Club Shay Shay interview. You know, right. Pat McAfee had a great week with all the Aaron Rodgers, Jimmy Kimmel controversy. Stephen A. might feel a need to keep up. Might be a need to compete. I don't know. I'm just saying because there really is no reason for Stephen A. Smith to be discussing Jason Whitlock at this point. I mean, he's been throwing shots at Stephen A. Smith and everybody over there for years. So maybe Stephen A. Smith got fed up. I don't know. Maybe he's just using this for content. I don't know.
But it gets to a point sometimes you probably just get fed up. It's just like you say one more thing and it's like, you know what? I just got to respond to dude. Like enough is enough.
Oh, who cares? Other than noise, other than drama, other than us loving to see people go at each other, why do we care about this situation? Because I still don't even know what this is all about.
Right.
And you've been explaining it for the past 4 or 5 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
I don't even know if I have anything great to say here other than just a continuation of people so committed to avoiding the truth about Stephen A. Smith and going down that path about how rigged the industry is and how people are installed because they will stick to the proper talking points. We've seen Charlamagne the God in previous interviews. This dude is afraid to say the word Jews. I mean, totally petrified, will not do it because he knows who he has to answer to. And so when Katt Williams, and then I come in and say, look, this whole industry's rigged and set up. And they're installing people that know nothing and will say anything as long as the bag is right. They don't want to address it. And so, hey, let's talk about any and everything else. Hey, why did Stephen A. do this? And what I'll give Charlamagne and is the other dude named DJ Envy, what I'll give them credit for is they did, at least in that segment portion, address an ancillary issue that is interesting. Like, what motivated Stephen A. Smith to do this? And he's basically, Charlamagne's taking a shot at Stephen A. Like, oh, Stephen A.'s thirsty. He's looking at Shannon Sharpe and Pat McAfee eat, and he's thirsty and wants some of that attention. And so Stephen A. is attacking Whitlock, trying to have his Katt Williams moment. That's interesting, and it's legitimate and true. But it's avoiding the obvious major issue because they're not allowed to talk about the truth. None of these people are. They're not allowed. This whole system is rigged. They have to lie to you. A pathological exaggerator, liar, fabricator is at the top of the sports media industry. It's been pointed out so crystal clear, but everybody has to avoid it. No one can talk about it. It's embarrassing. They should be embarrassed, but they're not. They're dancing. Again, I know I'm the one with the puppet strings and I'm just answering Glenn back in the right way. I'm over here free to say whatever it is I want. I answer to God and myself. I don't run from any of it. They're all hiding in plain sight, and we're going for it. Let's play SOT 15, Shannon Sharpe.
Oh,
right.
I don't look. I don't mess with him. I don't mess with him. He knows I don't mess with him. He likes to bring my name. You know, Fox tried to feed him some information about this and that, and he threatened. I don't get into all that. I just look. I know who I am. I know what I am. Okay, y'all say all y'all little stuff because see the problem that he has with me. See, and this is what a lot of people have that are journalists. You see, I can sit at the desk on ESPN or I did it at Fox, and I can do what they do. They could never live in my world. They could never play pro sports. So now, not only could I play sports and I was damn good, I can sit across and I'm more entertaining. I'm more informative. I'm more educational than you. And see, those that can do, those that can't talk. You see, all they can do is talk. I could do. That irks them.
Yeah.
It irks them that somebody from rural South Georgia with a lisp that overcame that can do this. It bothers them.
Shannon, I'm not bothered. Particularly, I'm certainly not bothered at this age or jealous or envious of your football career. Neither one of us could play in the NFL right now. So why would I be jealous of something you did 20 years ago? I'm just not. The football thing died for me at age 22. I moved into the journalism field. That's my career. I'm a journalist. I don't care about what you did on the athletic field. Now, you can't do what I do. I'm a journalist. You can't do it. Now, in this current media world that they've set up, where distancing yourself from truth is the primary requirement for success, yes, you can do that better than me because you're not a journalist. I am. And because you don't have as strong or maybe no allegiance to truth. Because all you care about is how can I make money? And that's what's the common thread among virtually all of these people I'm talking about. Matt Barnes, Steven Jackson, Dan Le Batard, Patrick Bet-David, Jeff Teague, Gilbert Arenas, Jemele Hill, Shannon Sharpe. All they care about is money. I care about truth. Not saying that to say, look how much better I am. That's how you interpret it. It's not really my real intent because I really don't think I'm better than you. I just think I'm more committed to truth than you. Because of my Christian faith and because of my career as a journalist, I'm not coming off of truth. You're not going to move me from that. And this system, the mainstream system, the way it's set up now, it punishes truth. I've accepted that. I've accepted that Shannon Sharpe, very fungible with the truth, just like all these other people. They don't care. It's can they get the bag? Yes, so you can chase the bag better than me. Hats off to you. You can't relate to someone, and you're in a different situation to me. You got enough kids and baby mamas and all that you probably need the money more than I do. Not probably, you do. And so you're doing something different. You got a lot of responsibilities, and you did a lot of really immature things. But I'll say this about Shannon in comparison to a lot of these other people that I'm talking about. He's more honest than most of them. I left Marcellus honest, but everybody else that I've mentioned so far, Shannon Sharpe's more honest than them. And he's better at concealing his dishonesty than they are. So he's more entertaining than they are. But I want to end on a shocking note. This is the last person I'm going to play. And some of the audience may not recognize the name, but the audience that knows black comedians will recognize this name. I watched what he did, and I was completely 1,000% shocked. If someone had provided me a list of names that I just rattled off, this would have been the last person on that list that I would have thought would make the most sense and would be the most honest. Not completely honest, but the most honest. This would have been the very last person. I'm sitting here shocked and we're only going to play a little snippet of Corey Holcomb, but I watched the entire thing. I was blown away. I had no idea that Corey Holcomb would be the most honest person. Play the clip.
We starting with Stephen A. Hurt feelings for Captain Smith.
Oh, so you saw that one too then?
Man, I was laughing like a motherfucker. He let that motherfucker get up under his skin. But Stephen A. Smith got caught capping. Let's start putting motherfuckers on blast for capping. If you capping, you capping. Motherfucker, Stephen A. Smith lied about hooping for Winston-Salem State. It was all a cap. Because when you put that shit in your little memoir book, a puss-ass book, you know niggas ain't reading that shit anyway. But for them motherfuckers that be trying to get at his ass, they read it. And they caught you up, didn't they, nigga? Because some dude said some shit that I was in agreement with. When a motherfucker get caught, he don't never say, you lying. He get to talk about you. You fat bastard. I can't stand that fat bastard. You can't stand that. He is a fat bastard. Both of y'all the same type of nigga, but he caught you, Stephen A. You was capping.
When I watched this the first time, I nearly fell out of my chair. Corey Holcomb cannot stand me. Corey Holcomb, for a solid 10 years, if not longer, I don't know, has been trashing me. He used to do it over Twitter, and I think they suspended his account, not because of me, Corey. I'm telling you, I had nothing, because I could care less what you have to say. He on his 5150 show, he's been trashing me for years. I hear from people. Corey Holcomb and I don't have much of a history, but we have a history. I met Corey Holcomb years ago. Again, he's one of these guys I met through my friendship with Jim Brown, my association with Amara I Can, my relationship with Rock Johnson, and a guy that Bobby Glanton Smith. I believe that Bobby Glanton Smith, I think, is who introduced me. And Bobby used to work for Jim Brown. And Corey, particularly at that time, an amazing young comedian. When I say this, and people that follow black comedians, and I hate to use, but you just follow black comedians, I'm just sorry. They know how funny Corey is, and that Corey had the potential to be Robin Harris or Bernie Mac. Corey had big time talent. Signed to development deal at a young age with one of the major networks or whatever. But, Corey's got some demons, some vices, I think, that undermined him getting that high level of success. And Corey is comfortable. His personality fits working smaller comedy clubs, catering to an all-black audience. I call it affectionately, some people hear it, the Chitlin circuit. And he does well. People love him. He has a passionate audience. And so I knew Corey years ago, maybe it's 15, 20 years ago, for a very brief time. And then, as I can't say a sin, but as Corey saw the opportunity to work me into whatever he was doing with his show, 5150, and some of his comedy or whatever, he started trashing me because, Corey is a leftist or, the stereotypical left-wing black dude. And so, he started trashing me. I'm like, okay, cool. Corey, do your business. I'm gonna mind my own business. To see this dude, and he did, again, he wasn't perfect because he did lie, because at some point we didn't play the whole deal, but he pretended like he had trouble remembering my name and blah, blah, blah. But, that's fine. He's above me, or he's above mentioning, talking about me, or pretending to be. But to see him say, you know what, screw it. I don't like Whitlock, but this point he's making about Stephen A. Smith, this is real. And we're in the year of truth. And I like people exposing truth, because Corey's the type to do it because he's had so much comedic talent. He knows the truth of what Katt Williams is saying. The most talented guys aren't at the top. It's the ones that will go along to get along and will get on message. And Corey is only going to get on basically his message, or what he thinks works for him. Is it a controlled message? I believe so. Corey is running around, basically his point of view. It may not come fully across in his comedy, but if you listen to his 5150 show or whatever, Corey's one of these guys. Black people are victims, and white people control everything, and people like Whitlock that actually think the black man can stand on his own 2 feet and needs to let the victim stuff go. They're sellouts. And so, I think it amazes me, these guys that, and I'm not saying, because I don't know Corey's relationship with Jim Brown, but some of these guys attached to Jim Brown. It's like me and Bobby Glanton were friends for a long time. And then eventually I figured out, man, Bobby is a part of Jim Brown's program, America I Can, and he can quote everything about America I Can, but he ain't gonna live none of it. Because Jim wasn't about no victimhood at all. America I Can was about men standing up and standing on their own 2 feet and taking responsibility for their life and all that. And so there would be guys associated with Jim Brown that loved Jim Brown, but would not practice any of his methods and would not implement or fully embrace any of his methods. They could quote it and they could run around and I'm friends with Jim Brown, but in terms of embracing that message, no dice. Too high risk, would put them at odds with their women. And so they just rejected it. And that's where I think, and again, I don't remember and don't know how close Corey was to Jim Brown, if Jim Brown had any influence on him. But I met him through Bobby Glanton, who was connected with America I Can. And Corey, Corey's comedic audience, black women, big part of it, the matriarchy. And so you have to cater your message to that audience. And he's done that. And so attacking to me works for him. And Corey, continue at it. I don't have a problem with it. just say my name right, which you eventually did. But I have to say, out of everybody, Corey was the one guy that went at the real issue and the real point. Stephen A. Smith is a pathological liar. And Corey, if you, there's so much material. If you go look at Stephen A. Smith and all the millions upon millions of lies that Stephen A. Smith is comfortable just in casual interviews saying, I want to put that, before we go, I want to put this clip, the drug dealing clip. I want Corey to get this as well. Corey, before I play this clip, I just want to give you the background. Stephen A. Smith, when he graduated high school, out of his own mouth, was 5'9", 130 pounds. He flunked fourth grade. He's dyslexic. Everybody in his neighborhood thought he was stupid, borderline retarded. He's stated on record that his high school counselor laughed out loud when Stephen A. Smith said something about going to college. He barely made his high school basketball team. His senior year left the team after a month or two because he basically riding the bench. He was a midget. He was thin, couldn't play. I've talked to some of his high school teammates. But I want you, Corey, I want you to listen to Stephen A. Smith talking about how drug dealers in Hollis, Queens protected him. There's so much material on Stephen A. Smith, just out of his own mouth, just using his own words against him. Let's play the drug dealing clip. I'm giving this to you as a gift, Corey, or you can continue to crack jokes on me. I don't care, but here's my gift to you from Stephen A. Smith.
That we just finished talking about when I talk about how, I'm not snitching, I'm not talking, I'm not getting into people's personal business or whatever. I grew up with that code. One of the biggest drug dealers in Hollis literally lived directly across the street from me, and he was a killer. And it was understood, Steve is not to be touched. You got dealers in Hollis. Steve is not to be touched. They understood that there was potential in me, and they literally threatened they were going to whip my ass if they ever saw me on the corner involved in the drug game in any way. They said we didn't have a choice.
How did they know? How did they know that about you?
They would see me on the basketball court. First of all, the level of diligence that I put forth, that I'd shoot like 300 J's a day and stuff like that. They'd see me in school. They know I came home, I do my homework, put in the work, whatever. They knew that I wasn't trying to be about that life. And so their whole mentality was, you got your mother there, you got your 4 older sisters there, active part of your life. You got a support system. You don't have to do this. We did. We made our choice. But we ain't gonna let you make this choice. And literally, I've had several of them tell me, we will f you up. Do not be on this corner. Do not be doing this. Do not be gonna bust your ass. Wow. And they meant it. And I knew they meant it. And so they would sit up there, they'd let me shoot, stuff like that. It would get dark. They had to get into their game. They said, all right, it's time for you to go. But it was understood. People in the neighborhood, it was widely known, do not touch me with that game.
Corey, thank me later. I believe, my memory, I think Corey's from Chicago. I think Corey knows a little bit about hood life, I think. This is based off memory. Probably haven't talked to Corey in 15, 20 years. Virtually everything that comes out of Stephen A. Smith's mouth is exaggerated or a lie. We'll move on to Steve Kim, talk a little sports. Next.
It's my obligation, no hate, discrimination, raising up your hands for freedom.
Brian Urlacher, previously on Fearless.
T.O. didn't go that year. He was boycotting the Hall of Fame because he went on his third try, not the first. So there were some players bad-mouthing T.O. and just saying, he shouldn't be allowed in, and he was having his own induction at his college that day. But there were some not very nice things said about T.O., and Joe Namath stood up and said something. And after he said what he said, man, for me, it opened my eyes just because like that's Joe Namath. To me, Joe Namath is one of the greatest like icons of all time. And when I'm in circles and Joe walks in, people are like, "Oh, that's Joe Namath over there." So when he stood up and spoke at that luncheon, that to me was one of the guys that, like, you know, now that Dick and Jim are gone, he's that next in line for me. If he wasn't already there already, but he was that guy for me.
Yeah, 모두 다 빨리 박수 쳐 기다리지 말고 서둘러 Reason that I'm back is to feed you raps I see that you are 배불러 So fly
All right, welcome back. Time for some Korean co-sell. I've covered all the Stephen A. Smith that I want to cover for today. I'm not going to drag Steve Kim into that. We're going to move on to some other NFL news. Steve, have you heard the news? Start spreading the news. The New York Patriots have their first black head coach. It's amazing. It's historical. It's the greatest thing to ever happen in the NFL. A black coach for the Patriots. Aren't you thrilled?
So they went from Bill to black. Okay, interesting. By the way, how cold is it in Nashville if you're wearing a beanie indoors? I'm actually just getting over a head cold. You must be freezing out there in that fine part of the country.
When you step outside, you're freezing, but I just wore this for, this is my wartime look. I'm at Whitlock versus everybody. I'm at war with everybody. But, hey, let me play you this clip of Jerod Mayo completely contradicting his owner, who just said, "Hey, I'm colorblind," and then Jerod Mayo came in right afterwards and said, "I'm so glad y'all named me the first black coach." Anyway, play the clip.
I do see color because I believe if you don't see color, you can't see racism. And whatever happens, black, white, disabled person, I've always, even someone with disabilities, I always, for the most part, people are like, when they're young, they kind of make the spot hot. Younger people know what that means. But what I would say is, no, I want you to be able to go up to those people and really understand those people. So it goes back to whatever it is, black, white, yellow, it really doesn't matter, but it does matter so we can try to fix the problem.
That was quite the word salad. I'm sure maybe we need someone from MSNBC to interpret that, or maybe we can get Ibram X. Kendi in to interpret. What did you make of that word salad?
Oh, a couple things. Number one, when I meet anybody, I don't really need to understand them. I just need to respect their rights and respect them as individuals and treat them properly. When I come into a room, I don't go around thinking, boy, I got to really understand everybody. No. You just try to get along with everybody and be cordial and respectful. The other thing is, look, he does make a point that we all see color. Let's be honest about it. When we're out in a setting and you describe somebody in a politically non-correct atmosphere, a lot of us will say, what's a black guy, an Asian guy, or a white guy? So we all see color. Okay, we all have preconceived notions. We all have prejudices, whether we want to admit it or not. But this is what my belief is, my takeaway from all of that, is that Jerod Mayo should not get too much heat for this. I think a lot of these guys in those positions are under a lot of pressure to basically say these things to placate the Jemele Hills and the Ryan Clarks of the world. Because if he goes the total opposite direction, says, none of that matters to me, I don't really care, they would then get a lot of outrage from the mob. Because I think there's two things going on here, or at least one, that a lot of these athletes or coaches that get elevated to these positions, there is almost a guilt complex or survivor's guilt that, hey, I made it, I'm still down, I still understand your struggle, even though it was my sacrifice and my hard work that got me here, okay? And then, as Thomas Sowell says so eloquently, from the people that expect him and demand him to say that, it is the philosophy of grievance, that if you don't go out there and act like you're aggrieved, then you're not down with the cause. So I think there's actually a lot of pressure on individuals like Mayo to say these things, whether they mean them or not.
Well, clearly he doesn't understand what he's saying because he couldn't fully articulate his opinion. he went off on a side road and got scrambled and then tried to bring it back. But, Steve, I get the pressure. I get it. But you're now the leader of men.
Yeah.
And you got to be above that. And so I say that, how do you think Todd Bowles would have answered that question?
Well,
he dealt with the heat and said, cut it out, and kept it moving. How do you think C.J. Stroud would handle that question? He just said, hey, we're going overboard with this white-black thing. Cut it out. This is a kid in his rookie year in college. They have the courage to say, you know what, I'm not going to pander to the woke mob. But Jerod Mayo, after his owner just pointed the direction the organization wants to go and the way the organization should be run, I just, when you prioritize seeing race, what you're really doing is justifying your plans to discriminate. That's what he's doing. This is so I can see racism. Who wakes up every day? Well, I got to be able to identify racism, because all racism is unfairness. Can you identify unfairness? Because everybody knows unfairness comes in all shapes, sizes, and colors. There's no specific group in charge of unfairness. We're all capable of it. And if this guy's worldview at 37 isn't broad enough, mature enough, sophisticated enough to see that and to be able to articulate it, I question whether he can lead a football franchise that 45% of his locker room is not going to be black woke players. And that's it. Because, again, there'll be a lot of black players that don't agree with this BS he's spewing as well. Now, they'll be afraid to say it, but I don't know. I was rooting for the guy. Now I'm highly skeptical.
Keep this in mind. Todd Bowles is significantly older than Jerod Mayo. But I thought there was a funny situation there where Robert Kraft was trying to pronounce his brother's name, and he said, no, that's one of the black names. I got you. I thought that was funny. You know what's funny? I think the name was like Shamar.
It was funny.
And I thought to myself, wait a minute, that's not even that difficult. Now, if it was John Tavius or something like that, I could see where Kraft would struggle.
It wasn't Shamar. It wasn't Shamar.
No, I think it was just Shamar. And it was funny. Everyone laughed except Kraft, which I found interesting. So, look, this is about wins and MFing losses, as Tony Phillips once said so eloquently. But again, I think a lot of athletes are under the gun to fake or at least state that they care and that they're down for the cause, because the bottom line is the peanut gallery is going to pressure them to be oppressed. That's just what it is right now. So,
Well, I'm looking for guys that are strong enough to tell the peanut gallery to pipe down, shut up. I got a football team to lead. There's a bunch of guys in this locker room that I wish some coach would just say, I'm not a race leader. I'm not even qualified. I was a football player. I spent most of my time in a locker room, chasing girls, lifting weights, not thinking about the rest of the world and these real world issues. I'm not qualified. No one ever says anymore, I'm not qualified. Everyone, well, I'm black, so that makes me some sort of expert on this. No, it doesn't. It really doesn't. You have anyway, I'm rambling. Let me move on and move you away from pretending to be even slightly woke. Steve, what do you think of the Dallas Cowboys here retaining Mike McCarthy?
This is a tough one, because if you gave Jason Garrett that long of a leash, and this guy's actually been probably more successful in his first 3 years. And the other question is, Jason, it's easy to make changes and to pound the table to fire people. I get it. But Jason, here's the question. Who was willing to take that job of the most scrutinized position in all of the National Football League with an owner who believes he's part of the coaching staff, and every single week is going to be so front and center in what he thinks about football, the team, and the game. I don't think that's an easy job. It takes a really patient individual to do it. And let's be fair. I thought McCarthy did a pretty good job leading that offense. They have to fix the defense, specifically get more physical in the front seven. But look, short of getting Jimmy Johnson or Bill Parcells in a hot tub time machine and Bill Belichick, who I don't think was really down with any of that tomfoolery, any of that ancillary stuff that comes along with being a Cowboy coach, working with Jerry Jones, he just may have not been interested.
So you think Bill Belichick thinks Atlanta is a better job than the Dallas Cowboys?
Well, keep this in mind. Bill Belichick has said...
Don't go Stephen A. Smith on me.
No. Well, first of all, let me just score my 1.5 points here for this. Bill Belichick, I believe, has kind of said that I want full control of football operations. I've read that time and time again. Take the what's that old line from Bill Parcells? If you want me to cook the meal, you got to let me buy the groceries. So it seems to me, and again, I'm making an assumption, and if I'm wrong, let me know. If Belichick took the Dallas job, he would not get control of player personnel or the draft. Think about, you know what one of the greatest days of Jerry Jones's life is? Draft day. Not for who they get, but the fact that they have the war room and all these people around real dressed nicely and have all these phones, and that man right there is just wheeling and dealing. And like he's in charge. I mean, the famous story is when he was with Jimmy Johnson, one time he told Jimmy, hey, Jimmy, when the cameras are on, can y'all make sure that I'm on camera? Make sure y'all talk to me. And Jimmy's like, why? Well, I want to be involved here. Really? You think Belichick wants any part of that?
No, he doesn't. He doesn't. So you're right. But I honestly don't blame them for keeping Mike McCarthy. Because you know what it might be? It might be a mature point of view from Jerry of like, you know what? I made this mess. I gave Dak $40-some-odd million. I'm the guy that was prepared to give him $60 million a year. I made this guy my franchise quarterback. Don't let me blame Mike McCarthy. Let Mike McCarthy help me figure out what's next at quarterback and what's next for the franchise. Jerry may be maturing in his old age, so I tend to agree with you.
Okay, better late than never.
Let's stay in the state of Texas and talk a little college basketball because I find this fascinating. Rodney Terry, the head coach of the Texas Longhorns, who are off to a really, really slow start. And I can't remember, didn't Rodney Terry, did he just get this job full-time last year? I can't remember, but he this is a Juwan Howard type look for Rodney Terry. Have you seen this, Steve, where he's all upset because I think South Florida, or was it Central Florida, South Florida, whatever, they did the horns down signal after upsetting or beating Texas. And this guy starts berating guys in the handshake line. The other team, it blew me away. Let's play the clip. That's bizarre. He's yelling at the opposing team. He's cursing at them. He's cursing and calling them classless because some kids, after beating Texas, do the horns down signal. This is crazy. And yes, he was the interim coach last year, just got the head coaching job this year. He seems insecure. Before you comment, Steve, let's play his comments from his post-game presser explaining his mental breakdown.
You know, I'm a big believer in you win the right way, you lose the right way. And, I always tell my guys, whether you win or lose, you win the right way. You lose the right way, you carry yourself the right way. You don't go through the handshake line or prior to getting to the handshake line and have about 6 or 7 guys putting the horns down. We don't do that, because when you do those kind of things, It looks very classless, and it also looks like you were just hoping to win. We never go into games trying to hope to win. We go into games expecting to win. So we don't act like that. You know, we expect to win. We don't jump up and down like we won a national championship. We sure don't step on anyone's home court deal and act crazy and try to show them up in any way. We don't do that. You know, so that's what I was angry about, and I was letting those guys know you don't do that. You know, you guys won. Hey, we shake your hand, tip our hat to you, but we're not gonna let you act that way in our building. You're not gonna do that. You're not gonna put your horns down and do all that nonsense.
We don't do that. He doesn't coach Central Florida. What is he talking about here? And I'm gonna throw Dion into this conversation here in a second, but go ahead. It's Central Florida they lost to.
Baby. You know, John Thompson is probably rolling over in his grave. You know, look, at the end of the day, for a program like UCF, to beat Texas in anything is a big deal. Because you look at the pecking order, you look at the food chain of college athletics. By the way, taunting is part of the fun of college sports. That when you have like a signal like the horns up to do the horns down, I actually like the fact that players care enough to do it. In an era of a bunch of mercenaries that transfer every 8 months, I'm glad these guys actually care enough to taunt the other team. And to that coach there, Mr. Terry, you know what Bobby Knight would have done? He just would have looked. He would have been pissed off. You know what? He would have gone right to that locker room and cussed out every one of his players for allowing them to get taunted. And he would have said midnight practice and had like a 4-hour practice. And he said, I know more about this game than you guys are ever going to know. And he just would have berated them for their own good because he's building character. Rodney Terry is coaching whininess. That's just he needs to come out and say, this is what I hoped he would have said. Yeah, we got taunted because we got beat. I need to be better at my job so that never happens again. I mean, taunting other teams, like the University of Miami, a lot of teams now for years have been doing the downward U. It's part of the game. I don't want to hear any complaining about it. You could be better at it, but this is what gets me about today's coaches. There is no real self-reflection of, instead of saying, God, you know what, maybe I could have coached better, or maybe I need better players, but to go out there, and I'm wondering where the UCF coach was, because I would have said, buddy, I'll take care of my team, you take care of yours.
Johnny Dawkins in his post-game site, he wanted to figure out what caused this. He didn't know what caused it, but in his post-game, he's like, hey, I'm going to get to the bottom. He thought his team did something really serious, and he said, I'm going to get to the bottom of it and figure out, but it was nothing. Texas is off to a 1-3 start in the Big 12. This guy was shining bright last year. I think their next 6 games are very difficult, but I want to go a different direction, put even a different spin on it. That type of stuff, horns down, the little tiny, it does bother coaches. You got to be above it, but it does bother them, and it bothers any competitor. But you got to be above it. But listening to Rodney Terry complain, and then I started thinking about, because I do, and people say, Dion lives rent-free inside my head. No problem. I'll accept that. But how do you think coaches and other teams feel when Shedeur is doing his little post-game show my Rolex watch deal and the taunting he does after games? And so it's like Rodney Terry can complain about it. No one's going to call him racist for it because he's black. He's got black privilege. But if a coach complains, if Dan Lanning gives a pregame speech that says, hey, they're about clicks, we're about football or whatever, he's somehow, he's got some kind of vengeance, or they basically accuse Dan Lanning of being racist for inspiring his team to go out and beat the brains out of Colorado because Colorado plays with swagger or in your face, taunting and all that. And I'm just sorry, that's where my mind went. I mean, is like, this stuff Jason, matters to coaches and players. It irritates them.
Right. And I miss the good old days. You know who's a real coach, a leader of men? Woody Hayes. Now there was a guy. Yeah, he got angry. You know what I love about Woody Hayes? In a blowout one time against Michigan, they're up by like 40 points, and he went for 2 really late in the game. And they said, "Well, Coach Hayes, how come you went for 2?" And like the leader he is, he says, "Because I couldn't go for 3." See, now that's the type of coaching we need. We need to make sports great again in this country.
That's a great story about Woody Hayes. Steve, I can't wait to get your thoughts on, I think his name's Sean Strickland. He's a UFC fighter.
Yes.
Wow. He went after a reporter yesterday. And I can't say all of it was proper, but man, I loved it. Everybody on the internet loved it. People that I thought might go tisk were actually kind of celebrating because, he represents kind of where we are. But let's play the clip of Sean Strickland getting into it with a reporter who's asking him questions about the Alphabet Mafia. Let's play the clip.
We've got a pretty supportive gay and lesbian community in this city. I did want to ask you about something you wrote a couple of years ago. You said, if I had a gay son, I would think I'd...
Oh, look, another. I'm saying to you, the swamp, you guys, the swamp.
You become a champion, you become a star, and someone says...
Let me ask you something. Are you gay?
Have you had the chance to interact with a more diverse...
Let me know, are you gay?
Could I get an answer?
Well, no, I'm asking, this is a part of, are you a gay man?
I'm an ally of the community.
Okay. If you had a son and he was like, you had a son, he was gay, you'd be like, oh man, you don't want a grandkid?
No problem with it.
Oh man, well, dude, you're a weak man, dude. You're part of the problem. You elected Justin Trudeau. Like, when he sees the bank accounts, like you're just pathetic. And the fact that you have no backbone and has he shut down your country and seized bank accounts? You ask me some stupid shit like that. Go move the on, man.
They answered the question, but I did want to ask also things you said about the trans community. You said this past October when they announced the Bud Light sponsorship that you'd go so hard on Bud Light in your next fight they'll have to accept me or denounce me when they know what and will know what they stand for.
This guy's like, hey, this Canadian's not that Canadian.
Are you still going to use your fight time to kind of speak on that?
Here's the thing about Bud Light. 10 years ago, to be trans was a mental illness. And now all of a sudden, people like you weaseled your way into the world. You are an infection. You are the definition of weakness. Everything that is wrong with the world is because of you. And the best thing is the world's not buying it. The world's not buying bullshit you're feeling. The world is not saying, you know what? You're right. Chicks have. The world's not saying that.
So one of the first thoughts that came through my mind, Steve, was like, that's not quite how I handled the Alex Reamer guy query.
Yeah, I hope you learned something.
I had.
I hope you learned something. Jeez. Take notes, Whitlock.
Your thoughts?
First of all, I want to begin with this to Sean Strickland.
Uh-oh,
slow 80s
golf
clap.
Huh?
No, slow 80s clap. That was too quick. But anyway, here's the thing. That reporter, Alexander Lee, he's a crouching tiger. What a disgraceful day for our people. Wow. I'm ashamed. Now, and I actually went to the guy's timeline, and I think I DM'd you this. His pinned tweet is something to the effect, before this UFC number whatever takes place, and he has like a little emoji with the fingers down, and it's a tweet from a few months ago where he said, trans women are women. So obviously he has an agenda. But this is the issue that I have with a lot of modern day journalists that work at specific outlets. I'm just trying to ask him, I'm not just saying this because he's Asian, what does that have to do with the price of tea in China? I don't understand it. I don't get it. But what I don't like is that too many reporters try to shoehorn their own personal and cultural beliefs to everybody else. And it absolutely boggles the mind that now they're not only trying to get an opinion, they're trying to force you to agree with their opinion.
There's no doubt about that. I thought, I mean, again, the guy was very profane, but he talked about something that I think is very real. And I've said it for years. Don't know if I've said it on this show, but if you're heterosexual and have kids, they want you to feel ashamed if you want your kids to be heterosexual.
Yes.
They want you to feel ashamed that if you're heterosexual, you had kids, of course your natural instinct is to want your kids to be heterosexual. And for all the people, I don't care. I'm good either way. I love, and you do love your kids. But there's nothing wrong with you wanting your kids to be heterosexual. Quit being ashamed of that. And so I hats off to that guy for calling it out. And the other thing I loved is the reason why he's pointing to that guy and saying, you're the problem. Because that guy is saying, Sean Strickland, you're the problem. And anybody that thinks like you is the problem. And Sean Strickland has every right to go, no. You're the problem.
Right.
This whole trans deal is a mental illness. It was in 1980. It was in 1950. It was in 1990, 2010. I'm not going along with your lie that someone with bat and balls who thinks they're a woman, Caitlyn Jenner, Bruce Jenner, whatever, that's a mental illness. It's been that way for years, and I don't have to change up because you want to normalize everything. Hats off to Sean Strickland, and hats off to Dana White for allowing that. You know what would happen to Sean Strickland in the NFL or the NBA?
No, he'd be suspended.
If he said that in the NBA, Adam Silver would personally come out of the closet to suspend this guy to come out of his office to suspend the guy for the rest of the year.
Jason, when I covered an event, and I know you've covered a lot of events, I went there as a reporter/journalist. I never went there as an activist or an advocate, honestly. And what happened, there seems to be this growing trend in society that not only do you have to respect my opinion or my beliefs, I'm going to enforce them upon you. You know one thing I don't see a lot of? I don't see a lot of heterosexual people coming up to these transsexual people trying to enforce their heterosexualness on them. It always seems to be the other way around. I don't see a lot of heterosexual people trying to indoctrinate the other side of the street. They just want to be left alone, and they want their kids to be kept apart from it. And I've actually surprised fighters before when I've interviewed them, and I've asked them a pointed question about a specific subject, and they give an answer expecting me to disagree. And you know what I just say? I said, okay, that's it. Because there's a time to have conversations, to argue, to go back and forth. But when I'm doing a story, number one, I never want to ambush anybody. I think that's a cheap form of journalism. I don't think it's really fair. But I think fighters really began to appreciate the fact, you know what, with Steve Kim, he'll kind of let you say whatever and let it go. That's like going back to the Shannon Sharpe, Katt Williams interview. I thought the best part of that interview is that Shannon Sharpe didn't really interject all that much or try to disagree. He just laid out and said, Katt, you do you, okay? Sean Strickland, there's two things here. Number one, he does not have to approve of that lifestyle. He doesn't even have to like it. But with that said, he shouldn't go around gay bashing, discriminating against them in any way, but he has a personal choice. He has a personal choice to not partake and, in fact, insulate himself from that lifestyle if he so chooses. And Jason, I think we all do.
Steve, thank you so much. Enjoy your weekend. You going out to JB's this weekend?
I might. I'm getting over this head cold. I'm only at 98.3%, which is better than most people's 125%. I don't know what I'm going to do. Are you going to be at JB's?
Probably not. I can't take a 4-hour flight. Flights make me sick. But I do have a ticket, and it's supposed to leave. But anyway.
Okay, we're running out of football season here. Okay.
I know. Stick around and watch this next segment. I'm talking about this is important. I'm telling you, for a guy like you that loves to work out and stay in shape, this cardio miracle stuff that I've been taking for the past 2 months, it's a game changer. Even healthy guys like yourself, I'm telling you, it affects your immune system, helps your inflammatory issues after a workout. Watch this next segment. We're going to bring on John. Thank you so much and have a great weekend. We're going to bring on John Hewlett, the founder, the CEO of Cardio Miracle. They're jumping on board as one of our great new sponsors. I can't tell you how much I believe in this product. I've been taking it for 2 months, but all you need to do is go to cardiomiracle.com/fearless. cardiomiracle.com/fearless. John Hewlett. And we'll end the show with my conversation with John Hewlett about Cardio Miracle next.
Carrie Lake, previously on Fearless.
Is my read on this right that, MAGA and America First is having some success?
Well, you know me, I'm MAGA. And MAGA stands for Make America Great Again. I don't know who wouldn't be for that. Actually, Barry Goldwater was for that. Ronald Reagan was for that, and President Trump. And when we put our country first, we already know it works. We have a stronger economy. And guess what? Everybody does better. So I remember back when Reagan was president, and kind of the same thing was happening. It was the Reagan Republicans versus the Rockefeller type Republicans. And eventually he said, we're all Republicans and we got to come together. But it was very obvious that the party was going toward the Reagan Republicans. And it's very obvious that this party is moving toward America First because we've seen that it works. And we have a very strong leader in President Trump.
All right, welcome back. You guys have heard me talking in the last week about this new supplement I've been taking for the past 2 months, Cardio Miracle. Listen, I couldn't give anything a higher endorsement than this Cardio Miracle. And I believe in it so much, I wanted to have the owner, the founder of Cardio Miracle, one of our new sponsors. This isn't about, hey, let me do a sponsor, a solid. This is about, man, I'm using this stuff and I'm getting incredible results. I've already told you guys earlier this week about inflammatory issues and just how much it has helped there. It's helped with energy and recovery after workouts. It's helped me in so many ways. I want to take a minute and share with the Fearless Army, those of you. It doesn't matter how, you could be 20, you could be 18, you could be 55 just like me, you could be 75. I couldn't give you a higher recommendation than making Cardio Miracle a part of your life. And so I wanted to bring on John Hewlett, who basically invented this and reached out to me a couple of 2 or 3 months ago through Pastor Ben, I believe, was like, hey, Jason, I got something I think you need to take and try. And I've been using Cardio Miracle every single day for the past 2 months. And I'm getting results from it. John Hewlett, welcome to the Fearless Army. Welcome to the show. I just want to start just with a basic question, because you can give a better answer than me. What is Cardio Miracle?
Well, Jason, thank you very much for having me on. I want you to know I've been a huge fan of your show, of your integrity, your journalistic excellence, and your sports knowledge. I'm in my 72nd year. I've watched a lot of sports and I've heard a lot of journalists, and I'm grateful for voices like yours. And we're delighted. In fact, several years ago, I said, I'd like to get Jason Whitlock on Cardio Miracle because we need him to be healthy for as long as possible. But Cardio Miracle, Jason, I was in the financial world for 30 some odd years, very successful. Like yourself, I was probably 6 inches short for my weight over the years and had a little bit of stress in my life. And I had been a high school athlete. I actually have pictures from my high school athletic career and even film. I even have it on film. We were state champs in 1970. But so about 80 pounds ago, I was a pretty good basketball player. Not great, but pretty good. But what happened with me is that I had family history of cardiovascular problems. lived a life of stress, didn't work out, was overweight, and under tall, I like to refer to it as. And then I had an emergency appendectomy in 2007. And unfortunately, our medical system almost did me in 3 times. They clipped a vein. I almost bled to death, sent me home, collapsed in the middle of the night. Paramedics had to take me back in the middle of the night to the hospital. Problems in the ICU, problems with the cardiologist in the hospital. And by the time I got out with my skin, my hide, I decided I was not going to go back for open heart surgery. I wanted to find a natural solution. So that led me to researching the discovery of nitric oxide, not laughing gas, not nitrous, but nitric oxide, which had won the Nobel Prize, interesting enough, in medicine when the Nobel Prize actually meant something in 1998. It was awarded the Nobel Prize for helping to reverse cardiovascular problems. And so because of that situation, it led me to discover and to work on the cardiovascular situation in my life. And so that's what I decided to go on a search for, looking for nitric oxide and solutions to heart disease.
And so one of the things we talked, a couple of months ago, this is what Cardio Miracle does. It takes this whole beat thing, because people take beats for cardiovascular issues, but this puts it on steroids or takes it over the top. Am I accurate in that?
Very accurate. In fact, one of the things that when I first got involved in the nitric oxide world, it was all about arginine and citrulline, amino acids. But then the beets came forward as being an alternative or in conjunction with. And so when I left the original company I was working with, because they weren't as committed to the science as I was, I then decided to add organic beets into my formula. And that ended up being extremely valuable to help the formula become even a 1-2 punch of both arginine, citrulline, and then organic beets, and then other key ingredients. We have over 53 ingredients, all plant and food-based, and that's what helps overcome the inflammation and the other problems of toxic attacks upon our cardiovascular system. And of course, from your own situation and others, the situation with diabetes is essentially a form of cardiovascular disease. And our good friends and brothers in the Native American, Polynesian, and African American worlds actually have a bit of a challenge in having maximum nitric oxide and vitamin D3 absorption. And so genetically, and so this really helps those people, those folks, those races have even a better chance, as well as people who are just dealing with everyday stress and hassles in their life. That forces your nitric oxide and your vitamin D down when you have stress and fear in your life. So we need more fearless, and we need less fear.
So I started out taking the stuff twice a day. Once in the morning, once in the evening. Then you and I talked. He was like, no, just you can take it as often as you want. And I part of the reason, I'm not joking here, and those of you that try it will be able to vouch for me, is when I was younger, I used to like to drink Kool-Aid, like a lot of kids. And now that I'm older and watching my sugar and all this other stuff, I don't drink sweet drinks anymore. But I promise you, this tastes like Kool-Aid to me. Not the over-the-top sweetened Kool-Aid, but now I take it, or I drink it 4 or 5 times a day just because I like the taste. And it's a way of just, because I pound water, I drink a lot of water, but now it's like if I want a treat, I put the Cardio Miracle in it. And so how often should you take it? And does everybody tell you man, this tastes so much better than I anticipated?
Well, if you know anything about nutritional products, green drinks, kale, arginine, vitamin D or grapeseed extract tastes like roadkill. I mean, you drink arginine, citrulline by itself, and take it out of a capsule, and you feel like you had a raccoon float. It's not very attractive. And so it's taken me 3 years. It took me 3 years to flavor Cardio Miracle adequately using organic and natural flavors, as well as we added coconut water, organic coconut water, carrot, beets, raspberries, all organic where possible. And we spared no expense in trying to flavor it. So I love it when I hear people say they love the flavor, because early in the Odyssey 10 years ago, the flavor took some real effort to get to a point, because we have so many good ingredients that don't taste very good that we've had to flavor it. But we also are low glycemic. We have virtually no carbs in Cardio Miracle. So you can literally drink it all day long as a substitute for caffeine and for other drinks, sugar drinks that are very, very harmful to you. The artificial sweeteners, I believe, are Alzheimer's in a cup. And so you need to make sure that you kept good. So we have the opposite of all the bad things you can drink. And if people can substitute Cardio Miracle for a lot of their caffeine, they're going to be a lot healthier and better off in the long run.
Well, I don't want to repeat myself, but inflammation is so much more damaging than people realize. And I have to say, there's been a lot of great things that I've been noticing about myself since I've been taking this, but the lack or the reduction in inflammation after a hard workout, after lifting weights, after getting off my Stairmaster, that is the number one thing that I've noticed. Like, I can work out longer, harder, and wake up the next day and feel normal and just better. That has been the number one of many benefits. That's been my number one benefit. And I have an understanding of how inflammation works against you and is really at the foundation of a lot of chronic problems.
Well, one of the things that athletes will find, even weekend warriors like myself at this point in time, is that it improves the VO2 max, or the oxygenation, by 10 to 20%. So you can work out longer because you're getting more oxygen in the blood, more nitric oxide in the blood. Then it also helps the lymphatic system get rid of the garbage, the waste material in your body. So we end up with people recovering with less soreness. Maybe you've noticed that. So you can work out harder and recover faster. And we have people who use it in their athletic pursuits that have gone from, middle of the pack as a biker, a hiker, a runner, to top 10 performance, because they can train harder, recover faster, and reduce that inflammation, which obviously becomes problematic when you're an elite athlete or even a weekend warrior going out and mowing your lawn, or today shoveling your snow, or working in your garden. As you get older, the aging process works against you. So anything that can deliver better blood flow, better oxygen, better nutrients, and a better lymphatic contraction to get rid of the garbage is obviously going to help you in many good ways.
Have you heard from any athletes that have made your product a part of their routine?
Absolutely. One of the things that's been really exciting is Keith Clearwater, who you may remember that name. He was he won the Colonial Open years ago. He was the Rookie of the Year on the PGA Tour. He was an All-American 4 years at Brigham Young University's golf team. First time they ever won a championship. He played, with Mike Reed and Johnny Miller and all of those illuminous players through the years. Keith was the first PGA player actually to lift weights back in the 80s and was criticized for lifting weights. And he's a fitness. I mean, he's in his early 60s. He looks like he's 40. He says he hits the ball further. He can practice longer on the driving range, and the stamina going down the stretch when he plays competitively or in charitable tournaments has improved. And he's introduced it to his friend Tom Pernice, who's introduced it to a lot of the Champions Tour people. So we're seeing some interesting inroads in the golf side. And then, of course, we have people like Michael Smith, who's the analyst for the Utah Jazz, former NBA player, played with Larry Bird. He's now an elite golfer, as well as still an outstanding basketball player at 60. He's finding it to be the best supplement he's ever taken. So we're getting it introduced more and more to runners, especially runners, Ironmen, marathon runners, bikers, Hikers are finding the benefits of more oxygen and better lymphatic contraction being extremely valuable in those competitive. And we actually have a 58-year-old kickboxer who went from just the average guy in his gym to kicking the asses of everybody in their 20s and 30s in the kickboxing, and he credits it to his training with Cardio Miracle. So we're seeing a lot of really fun things in the athletic world. But I'll tell you, Jason, even more important than that is when you go to the doctor and get your blood work will be astonishing to both your practitioner, the nurse, and to yourself, because the science is clear. And Cardio Miracle uniquely is the only product of its type that has all kinds of science backing up the things that we try to talk about on extending safe nitric oxide, lowering inflammation, fighting the oxidative stress and the aging process, and helping people to run faster, jump higher, or even as an old person to be able to function with more clarity as the cobwebs seem to set in as you get a little bit older.
Well, John, thank you so much for introducing this to me. It's a pleasure for me to be introducing it to my audience. We're going to do so passionately because I believe in this so much, and I'm sure my audience right now, I hear from the female audience all the time. They always say, Jason, you look like you're in your 40s. And now here recently, they've been saying I look like I'm in my 30s. I'm telling them it's because of Cardio Miracle. So anyway, John, thank you so much. Thanks for believing in Fearless, and thanks for partnering with us. That was awesome. And guys, I believe in this. I'm experiencing the results. I want you to join me on this journey. It's part of my weight loss journey. It's part of my health journey. Join me on this as well.
Waiting for the countdown, coming off the breakdown, standing in line for freedom. Looking for a breakout, feeling like a standoff, nothing in life like freedom. Came like a fighter, striking like a ladder, making all these moves for freedom. I want freedom. No negotiation, my sister, no relation. We all just wanna have freedom. Sitting on the corner, never been alone. I'm breaking my back for freedom. Blessed, we are living, get back. We are receiving, all deceiving. We all wanna be free. We want freedom. I wanna